live.
Yeah, I figured, how about we just keep it on your channel? That way people can gather there versus trying to decide, because we have a lot of mutual people who follow both of us. And I figured at this point, let them go over to your channel, collectively, instead of like trying to split the group up.
Okay. I got you. What am I doing?
That is a good question.
I was looking for a layout, but I'm just going to give up. So we're like, I don't like this. It's weird. Okay. That's a little better, I guess. I don't know.
Whatever you want to go
Okay.
with.
Hi, everyone. This is our second episode. So let's just clarify like the fire and ice thing.
Let's do that.
I saw it coming up in your chat. Like, so when did we do our first live together?
Our first live? Let me check. Was it
It's
May?
been a while.
I want to say May, but let me, my retention memory, it sucks, but I can go back, I can look. And the first time we did it was 5 months ago. See if I could do this. Let's see. 5 months. It wasn't in May. It was April 5th, 2024.
Okay. So there is another, so we're just fire and ice because obviously I'm ice and he's burn, like cold truth and burn after eating. So we decided that when we go to live together, we'll be fire and ice. So we are not the other fire and ice that used to be Frosty's channel. But he's added a co-host and then they became on the one channel, Fire and Ice. So we're just fire and ice when we go live together. It's
makes perfect sense, right, people? Cold
right,
truth,
like
burn after reading, fire and ice. It just works. It wasn't like I said, it'd be great. Let's go screw Frosty over. And
well, we had
else.
it before they did, though. That was the thing, is like people were telling someone told me that Frosty was kind of like he thought we were making a dig at him because of the fire and ice. And I didn't even, I was like, what? I had to look it up and I'm like, oh, they are fire and ice.
But I'm not trying to.
We were fire and ice before they changed his channel to fire and ice. So I'm not going to like stop doing our little thing here.
Yeah, I'm not trying to make a dig. I've heard the name Frosty
before, not at
but
all.
I never went to the channel. So
I didn't even know. I didn't even know that they had gone through like a, what would you call, like a rebranding. So yeah. But
look,
for anyone that not trying
to, there's room for the name. Okay, let's all stop crying about it. Okay, we're okay. We're all right.
Yeah, everything's fine. There's no need to like, oh, this isn't fire and ice. We're just fire and ice for joint episodes. That's it. No big deal. Yeah, exactly. When Chaotic and I go live, we're chaotically cold. Like that's our name. She's chaotic and I'm cold. So it's just something like that. I didn't know that we would have to make a thing out of it, but I reached out to Tom and I was like, or Tommy, and so it was like, hey, like that we started doing that on the first episode. Like it wasn't meant to be a dig at you or anything like that. And he was like, oh, okay, like I should have just asked, and it was all cool. So there's no issue there. But
who actually came up with the idea?
Stuff. Huh?
You know who came up with the idea? It wasn't you, it wasn't me. It was actually Crime Geek.
Oh yeah, that's right.
She was the one that mentioned it. Like, you guys are like fire and ice, and I was like, that's good. I was like, we should go with that, and we mutually agreed to it. So, if everyone go after Crime Geek, go attack. No, I'm kidding, of course. I hope people understand sarcasm, but no, it was, and I give her a lot of credit. I thought it was a cool name for us.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah, it was. I think our first episode was obviously like Greeno.
Yeah,
so we've kind of branched off into now talking about these hearings together and stuff. But yeah, no, Delphi Dummies, like that. I don't think there's any. I just saw Frosty at the hearing. Like there's no issue there. It was just I don't know, someone said something to him and, like one of those deals where it's just like it's no big deal. But
I
thought
would
I
also
would
like.
clarify because on your channel I noticed there was like a comment from Fire and Ice like, "This isn't us."
It was like a
I was
public
like,
statement. Like, I'm like, really? We have to have a press conference about this during a live stream? And on a side note, Delphi Dummies, I love your work. Your stuff is
yeah,
good.
for sure. It's
I was
pretty
watching
great.
on Sunday. I was watching that stuff like in like just binging it, and I was like rib hurting laughing. It was good.
What is up, Gonzo? Check this guy out on his channel, man. He just does the most awesome stuff. Like the life everybody would like to leave if you like adventure and extreme
Movie
sports,
adventure.
that is. If you don't, you wouldn't like his life, but it's so cool. Really cool guy. He's been around for a really long time. We've got Rescue All the Dogs, the same. I've gotten to know her a little bit. She's super cool. Al on the Prowl. Hey, dude. Dave's got a show. He goes live late at night, but it's always really, really useful cases that don't get coverage. Hey, Charlotte. Hey, Lake. Big Fish. If I missed you, I'm so sorry. Melissa, what's up? It's very hard to manage live shows with staying on a task and being conscientious of time. Is that kind of
Sure.
why you want to get away from it and I dragged you back?
No, actually, I just feel like I'm more on point for the most part. I still make my mistakes in my pre-recorded videos, but I feel like, if I screw up something, I can always go back and re-record it until it's to my satisfaction.
There you
And
go.
I've noticed that's where I get a lot of the views. Now I put my foot in my mouth because now the live streams I think are starting to take off as soon as I say I'm leaving. And I think, especially if StreamYard is going to jack up their prices the way that they are, like,
Dude,
I'm not going to do that.
that's
Um,
insane.
yeah, it's ridiculous. And I could still get out the messages. I just thought the live streaming, I thought maybe that'll be more engaging for people because I don't mind the comments because I can ignore the comments and go back and
Yeah.
kind of go through them, read them. That's not a big deal. But also, like, and I mentioned in my one video, it's like sometimes, like, my brain just kind of it switches on and it switches off. Like, I was even thinking, like, as we're gonna talk about Dr. Perlmutter, I
Ugh.
was like, there's someone I kind of somewhat want to compare to, even though it might be an unfair comparison. And it was an
Oh, I
occult
hope it's
ex
the same person.
it was the occult expert in the in Damien and Jason's trial. It was Dale Griffiths, and
No, that's
and
not what my comparison.
and as much as everyone knows that I believe that the West Memphis Three are guilty, I did not like the occult motive that they brought forward. I think it was just three mean little bastards that did some horrible things, and I just the only difference between Dale and Dawn is that at least Dawn has a PhD where Dell was uncredited.
Oh,
But I
wow.
just but I felt like a lot of their stuff was generalized. But I don't want to jump ahead. But I wanted to
Yeah.
bring it up. But the whole point was that I'm like, what was his name? I'm like, I've I've looked through this stuff 1,000 times and I can't think of his name. And that's just
Yeah.
sometimes how bad my memory is. But if I script something out, I know the names. They're there. I can say them.
Right.
So makes it easier.
Yeah, I was thinking of Bones, the TV show.
Oh, Bones.
Well, because when I hear anthropology,
Mhm.
anthropological methodology, whatever, like that is the study of like even forensic biological is like the study of like the skeletal like bones. So, I don't know. This is a whole different, and then taking it into the well, I'm jumping ahead. So we left off with the hearings on August 31st.
All right.
And that ended with Brian Harshman, if you remember. So we went through that. And then, so August 1st, the morning started out with Rosie giving a closing statement for the suppression hearing. And Stacy Diner, she gave a closing statement for the same suppression hearing. And then that hearing was wrapped up. And then the August 1st, the rest of the time, which had to have been the longest day ever. Like, I'd like to compare it to like other days in other courts to see. It was, I don't know how the people did it, just staying there that whole time like that. But it was the motion in limine, which was the state's motion to suppress. They agreed on 7. The parties both agreed on 7 of the paragraphs of the motion in limine, which were basically just like, let's get along and not like jab at each other while the jury or during voir dire in front of a jury, basically just like etiquette. And the judge, I guess she was kind of like, yeah, I can't even believe that this had to be a thing. But if you try to step outside of that, I run a tight ship. So I'm going to hold you to the rules of like just being assholes, I guess. I don't know. But I guess I could see where McLeland, based on, all the stuff that's happened, previously, would want to do that. And even the defense might want to do that as well. So I don't know, but they agreed. And then that left with the third party. So before we get into Don, the burden of proof is on the defense in order for them to get past the motion in limine's paragraph. What was it? 7? No, 8, I think. So they have, different parts of, now they have to basically prove that this scene involves a ritual sacrifice, and that this scene, there was a lots of points to the motion in limine, but that was where we're getting into Don, basically. But the third party is based, it's got to be based on evidence that is admissible at a trial. So so just read these, and that way you can keep these rules in mind as you listen to this testimony and the testimony of a bunch of other people that we don't have transcripts for, because the defense did not ask for them. And that means you have to wait. So you have to ask for them. Then you don't have a priority in the courts if you wanted to buy them yourself. They're $5.75, and there's no priority in getting them transcribed for the public, to where there would be a priority if they were transcribed for the defense. But since they didn't ask for the whole entire hearing to be transcribed, just certain individuals that testified, we don't have those. So there's like a huge gap in a lot of different testimonies that unless you went to the hearings, you don't have. But so this is the Indiana Rule of Evidence. It's 401. So the test for relevant evidence. Evidence is relevant if it has any tendency to make a fact more or less probable than it would be without the evidence. And the fact is a consequence in determining the action. So that's Rule 401. 402 is general admissibility of relevant evidence. The relevant evidence is admissible unless any of the following provides otherwise: the U.S. Constitution, the Indiana Constitution, the statute not in conflict with these rules, or other rules applicable in the court of this state. Irrelevant evidence is not admissible. And then you have 403, which is excluding relevant evidence for prejudice, confusion, or other reasons, which is one of the things that McLeland put in his motion in limine. The court may exclude relevant evidence if its probative value is substantially outweighed by a danger of one or more of the following: unfair prejudice, confusing the issues, misleading the jury, undue delay, or needlessly presenting cumulative evidence. Cumulative, that's a big word.
Yep.
I mean, it's not a big word. It's a simple word, but that's a key word in a trial, is cumulative. So that's what I had on that. Now we're into Perlmutter. Are you ready?
I'm ready. You want me to start this off?
Yeah, go for it. Let's hear your notes.
Okay. So, with Dawn Perlmutter's testimony, one thing that stands out is the lack of credible expertise in Odinism. Perlmutter helps teach and train FBI and DEA agents to identify indicators of ritualistic murders. After reviewing crime scene photos and other evidence of the Delphi murders, she testified, "In my opinion, this was a textbook ritual murder." And I have a lot of problems with this. But first, let's also mention she does have a PhD in art and symbolism, which is part of what makes her testimony in the Delphi case highly questionable. And she introduced herself as an expert in ritualistic killings, but her credentials quickly fell apart under scrutiny. While she has a background in symbolic anthropology and ritualistic crimes, she was unable to provide any specialized knowledge or expertise specifically related to Odinism, the central theme of the defense's argument. Instead, she described herself as a generalist, which was, in my opinion, a glaring weakness in her testimony. How can you testify with authority on a supposed Odinist ritualistic murder if you're not even an expert in that specific area? It became evident that she was stretching her expertise to fit a narrative, a tactic that fell flat under cross examination. And let's talk about the ceremonial knife. It was a stretch. One of the more absurd claims that she made was about this ceremonial knife supposedly being used in the murders. She argued that the weapon found in a social media image, actually several images, it fit the profile of a sacrificial tool used in rituals. However, she provided zero concrete evidence that this knife had anything to do with the crime or was even present at the scene. It was a wild assumption at best, a desperate grasp at straws. The prosecution quickly pointed out that no such knife was recovered from the crime scene, and her speculative leap from social media images to real life evidence was nothing short of laughable. But not as laughable as this. The farce of magical thinking. One of Perlmutter's primary theories rested on the concept of magical thinking. The idea that individuals who engage in rituals or cult-like behaviors believe their actions can alter reality. And while this is an established psychological phenomenon, her application of it to the Delphi murders was highly questionable. She tried to paint the crime scene as one full of magical symbolism. The bodies were near water, the positioning of branches over the victims, and even possible rune-like shapes. And that's why that part of it, I kind of compared it to Del Griffith's explanation of things that were at the crime scene in the West Memphis Three. It's like there's a lot of conjecture here, but under McClelland's sharp questioning, it became painfully obvious that these were nothing more than vague observations being forced into a preconceived theory. There was no forensic evidence to back up her claims of magical thinking being at play here, just a series of speculative conclusions. And the whole idea of this being a ritualistic crime scene, she made sweeping generalizations about the crime scene, suggesting that its locations and elements were indicative of ritualistic murder. She pointed to branches placed over the victims and speculated that they were arranged to form symbolic runes. However, Slick Nick masterfully exposed how flimsy these interpretations were. He pointed out that the branches could have been placed there for any number of reasons, none of which had to do with rituals. Uh, Slick Nick McClelland effectively reduced her grand theories to mere conjecture, and that's what they are, emphasizing that there was no substantial evidence tying these elements to any sort of Odinist ritual. And when pointed with this, she was inflexible and unscientific. One of the most damaging aspects of her testimony was her stubborn refusal to change her conclusions, even when confronted with contradictory facts. When asked by Slick Nick McClelland if she would reconsider her ritualistic theory if Rick Allen himself admitted that the branches were placed over the girls just to cover the bodies, not for a ritual, She said no. Even if Allen confessed outright that the murders were not ritualistic, Perlmutter was dead set on sticking to her theories. This unwillingness to adapt or adjust in the face of contradictory evidence made her testimony seem more like an agenda driven narrative rather than a scientific analysis. And I got to give Slick Nick a lot of credit here. His cross examination of Perlmutter was nothing short of a takedown. He expertly highlighted her lack of specific knowledge about Odinism and pointed out the speculative nature of her conclusions. He questioned why she declared the crime scene as ritualistic on court TV in September 2023, long before she had even reviewed any of the evidence. The revelation was damaging, exposing her as someone more interested in pushing sensational theories than conducting an objective analysis. And McClellan didn't just discredit Perlmutter, he destroyed the foundation of her argument, showing that she was trying to bend the facts to fit a narrative rather than letting the evidence speak for itself. And to me, it just led right back to Rick Allen. Her testimony was so outlandish that it actually helped reinforce the focus on Rick Allen. By presenting such a convoluted and baseless theory, the defense appeared desperate to divert attention away from the overwhelming evidence pointing to Allen. And Nick brilliantly shifted the focus back to him, emphasizing that the confessions, the eyewitness accounts, and the forensic evidence, we'll see how this goes, but like the unspent round, those were far more credible than Perlmutter's wild speculation. And so, in conclusion, Dr. Perlmutter's testimony can only be described as a weak attempt at creating doubt where none exists. Her unscientific approach, coupled with her refusal to adapt her theory when confronted with facts, made her look more like a sensationalist than an expert. And McClellan's cross examination was surgical, completely discrediting her and refocusing the case on Rick Allen, the person who truly stands at the center of the evidence. The defense's reliance on Perlmutter's testimony seemed not only desperate, but also absurd, given how detached her theories were from the actual facts of the case. So I'm curious if you disagree with anything, if you want to add to it. I am curious.
Oh, we're done. Goodbye, everyone. We have very different styles. I think I cannot write like that. That's why I do lives and just go over notes and timelines, because I can't put everything together, or I don't take the time to, I should say. But no, that was a very well written, well spoken, opinion of what happened with Dr. Perlmutter. I think things I would highlight is the scientific nature of evidence-based methodologies would be like my first thing, and of how you do, you come up with a hypothesis and then you go about trying to figure out if this is applicable or not. And it seems like, to me, it seemed like as I'm reading through this whole thing with her, you're looking for what obviously you're an expert in. So you're looking for these elements. But I just read a book by, oh my gosh. Well, she seems to think, she said in her testimony, remember that, about anthropological methodologies and behavioral analysis. She said behavioral analysis was like the Western view of crime scenes, as far as like ritual, because a ritual is just basically like if I tuck my hair behind my ears 3 times in a row, and then I wait 10 seconds, and then I tuck my hair behind my ear 3 times in a row, and I wait 10 seconds, that's a ritual. There's religious rituals. Obviously, we, take the Catholic Church, you're taking communion. That's a ceremonial ritual. So, but when you really, when I'm reading a book by a OG, one of the OGs of the behavioral analysis unit, and they give testimony, obviously expert consultations and stuff, and so like a whole chapters and chapters of the book was about will not, just because of integrity, will not take a case and just look at it from a purview that the defense or whomever is calling you, whether it be prosecution or defense, is giving you. But I will come to my own conclusion based on my expertise when I have seen everything. And that's the main thing that bothers me with her testimony. At the end of the day, when you get through all of it, some of it I find there's a clear bias to say absolutely, or like in my, like this is definitely a ritualistic homicide, like a ceremonial sacrifice homicide. Like that's a very definitive statement to make as an expert when you haven't even reviewed the case in its entirety, and that became pretty clear during, the cross-examination, and then they redirected. But if you want this is just me, if you want my opinion on something, I want to know everything about everything in order to not have a bias, right? Mm-hmm. So as an expert in a field, I found it like incredibly unprofessional. So I'm just going to say that straight out the gate. I found it unprofessional when it came to the points of, well, no, I didn't look at all of these images. I didn't look at, no, I'm not, a blood spatter expert. No, this is definitely a rune on the tree, but yet later on it like totally falls apart, just like things like that. And like, well, Dr. Kors said this, but that's also just, that's anatomy and physiology. That's just anatomy and physiology. That's just the science of what's going to happen if these major arteries and veins in your neck are sliced. So to jump to the conclusions about that's the ritual and like this blood is a F because the killer put his fingers in it and made a ruin on the tree, when you have a blood spatter at like another, what was the Cicero saying this. So the only thing I can see is that it would give, if it were based in credible suspects, her testimony could be valid. Ish, at least for the jury to decide. But at the bottom line of like the testimony, and she's giving specifics. She mentions American Guard. She mentions the Vinlander Social Club. This is in cross. This is before we even get into the specifics of Abby and Libby. She's already mentioning elements of like research that she's done and been a part of outside of this case. So hate groups, white supremacy, kindreds, Odinism. And how funny is it that all of a sudden what started out as Odinite, which is not even, that's an element, became Odinist. And now all of a sudden it's Austria. Odinism and Austria, or however the hell you say it, is the same. They're interchangeable definitions of each other. It's a Norse pagan religion. It predates Christianity. This is where we get the term heathen. Pagan became because modern cult societies became Islamic, Judaic, and Christian, like off of biblical, like monotheistic viewpoints, to where with pre that Odinism, in Greek mythology, there's the worship of many gods. So what's that called? Mono and theo, like a mono is one god. And then, you have was it paleo or something? I don't know. I'm probably saying it wrong. Paletheon, something like that, to where it's like just many gods. Right. There's many Greek gods. There's many Norse, Icelandic, Germanic gods, so I didn't mind so much that she was a generalist, like, because that's what she called herself, is more of not like an Odin expert, but that she would be able to tell the difference between a crime scene at, say, like an Ohio chapter of Soldiers of Odin. And another misnomer is that the sons of Odin are different from the soldiers of Odin. The soldiers of Odin do encompass the players that are mentioned in the motion in limine to have them ex-nate from the hearing of the jury. Sons of Odin is like a prison gang that is separate. And that's what I keep waiting for. That we're going to have to sit through another hearings about motions in limine to get out third parties when it involves the sons of Odin, because there are some local sons of Odin, but they don't have any crossover with the soldiers of Odin. These are guys that go way back. Brad Holder was a practicing Norse, Ostru Gingrid, like before he met Amber Holder in 2018. The Gungree's path, that's Odin's spear, and then it's based on warrior, so there's the paganism, which is just modern movements. Like, she goes into all of these things, and they're all right.
Mm-hmm.
They're all completely relevant. You can track these guys on their Facebook pages, because they'll all have, like a Thor's hammer, they'll all have certain things, and then you can kind of, basically just pattern recognition of recognize, okay, and like, oh, they know each other, they had this meetup here. Then the whole stretch of trying to make it on a pagan holiday, that was such a stretch, because those are sundown. This happened in the middle of the afternoon, not at sundown. Like, you have to get me to throw out Dr. Coors and Cicero, because for a long time previous to these hearings, we did not know. There was the assumption that they died where they were found, or moved and staged, when that was leaked out by the murder sheet about the Ron Logan affidavits and stuff. We knew from a profiler's purview of staged. So that would mean that there was made to look like something is a counter measure, right? That's what stage means. And but now, throughout these hearings, we now have proof that, like, no, by the blood, which is so horrible to even talk about, but by that, yes, they were moved, but they died right there. There was way too much blood for it to not. And then obviously the congeal, yes, but the thing is, like, they're focusing in on the time of death, and that not being on the autopsy report. And I don't know, unless they're specifically asked to give a time of death, like, you really receive a time of death if you die in a hospital, or like in a,
Plus,
by a nurse. Like, there's like, you have to give a time of death. Like, it's not necessarily a part. I'm sure that, you could give one, but it would be based on the congealing of the blood, like the saturation, the different aspects of, like, where this blood is closest to the air versus where was it saturated the most? Well, was it covered by a body part? Was it, and then you may have some congealed but still liquid, like the different discolorations of the blood. Like, we're talking about science and forensics here, not magicalness here. Like,
right. And we can also base that, people always think, like, well, they can name, like, not just the day, but also the exact time that it happened. Not necessarily. Sometimes they'll give you a block of hours. It could be between 2 to 4 hours, between 2 hours to 8 hours. Like, it's not always going to come down to the exact time frame, but that's also going to be based on whatever timelines that are going on and other factors. Like, for example, as far as Libby's phone, as far as when she, they were ordered, her and Libby and Abby were ordered down the hill to where that phone's positioning last stopped. And then you can make a lot of, good opinion guesses as far as what the time frame of when the death occurred. Sometimes you have to look at all these other different factors to kind of triangulate. That's when it is.
Yeah. Now Joe Smo, hey, but he brings up the part about an undoing. But let Perlmutter testified that this definitely wasn't an undoing. And I have to say that I don't remember that coming up yet, but I probably wrote it down somewhere. I don't. That was in that was the if that's in the depot for Nicole Robertson, like I would like to know. I would like to read more about that because I don't know. I mean, just not an expert, but what is what is the where is that present other than and if you look at the dichotomy of the two victims, you know,
Well,
like
and
the
that becomes
juxtaposition of them. How is
you're
this an undoing? I don't know where they came up with that either.
well,
So
and at that point, Cicero, and we'll get to it when we get to it, but like Cicero's making an educated guess on profiling, on how uh, the murder suspect was thinking and behaving, and why he did what he did. Was
yeah,
that because it was an undoing, or was it he just did a very sloppy job of thinking he was going to cover things up, and he wanted to leave the scene because he didn't want to linger? It could be as easy as that too, or he could have his own messages that aren't linked to
yeah,
Odinism or anything else. So there's a lot of room for conjecture there that we can't really say what he was thinking at that moment. All we know is that there were some, I say this with all due respect, sticks placed on those bodies in the
yeah,
way that they were. But nothing indicates, yep, it was definitely paganism. That's why they
right.
were placed there the way that they were.
Yeah, and I mean, it's odd. It is. It is very odd, but you know, to separate it from, and then, you know, to make statements like, you know, oh, this is completely different than behavioral analysis of, and because that's more Western and it has to do with like psychopathologies.
Mhm.
Well, I don't know, but there's a DSM, you know, 5 or whatever the newest one is now that's just chock full of magical thinking. OCD is a ritual like patterns and it is magical thinking. There, you know, if you don't go underneath a ladder, you know, you'll have better luck that year. Like that's magical thinking. So it's just a lot of just I don't know. I felt like this throughout the whole hearings. Like, who are these for? Who are these for? Because at the end of the day, if you don't have I hate that word nexus, it's going to go to the list of like words I never want to hear again is nexus, unified command. There's like a long list of never want to hear again. But if you don't have, like, if you can't place them at the crime scene, like, what do you have? I feel like the rules of evidence, like, just back to just stop right here. Like, this
Mhm.
is the only thing that the defense needed to argue about third party, and they should have just left it at that because this is documented truth. This is the truth. The state's original and their amended charging affidavit allows for third party. So based on that alone, he's charged with 4 counts of murder. In Indiana, we don't have like, you know, we have murder, which is an intentional killing of another, you know. And then you have the clause 2, which allows for what? Third party. The way he amended it and filed it, if you read that in January of 2024, that allows for third party. But when you try to make it about a theme in a ritualistic sacrifice, you know, killing, and you try to like zone in on that in pretrial hearings, and then you don't prove with like actual evidence of like, hey, look, this alibi is, you know, like, I think they really thought that the alibi of like, well, we don't know where he was at 4:30 a.m. with the freaking phone. So it probably was him, you know, and I don't know. There was just nothing that, in my opinion, that is, if you're thinking about this case outside of emotion, outside of how you feel about, you know, his innocence or guilt, just as a logical, just like no emotion applied, just pretend like you don't have any. And you look at these things from that purview and the law, and what the Constitution of Indiana, the United States Constitution, what the rules of evidence are, what the rules of trial and procedure are, Indiana code, criminal code. We may not like it, but like, take out the emotionality. This is just the way, this is what you have to do. And you didn't do that. I don't know how to get past that in my mind to get me into a magical thinking area of where this is applicable. If you can't apply it to the suspects that you are going to name and the avenue of which the motive is that this is a ceremonial sacrifice and that these guys did it, but because our client doesn't have any, he doesn't know anything about that kind of stuff, so he didn't do it. I don't know. Thoughts? Uh-oh.
Is that me or you?
How long have you been gone?
Oh, you know what? I think I accidentally unplugged my mic because I was hearing the static. I didn't know if that was mine or yours or what was going on. So I just wanted to unplug it. So that's probably why. Now I know not to do that.
Yeah, I believe that what Joe Smo, and I agree. Like, you're talking about algor mortis, liver mortis, rigor mortis, like things like that. And then a test by the coroner. Do we know for a fact that he didn't do a body temperature? Or are we just assuming that because she says it and people say it? Like, no, has the public been able to consume the deposition of Dr. Pores on, you can only test it, like, you're only supposed to testify. Like, that's why the regular people get confused. Like Cecil, he can't go outside of his, what he's there for. He's there for like a specific, I'm giving my expert, testimony on whatever the thing is, pick one. You can't ask a blood spatter expert, like, oh, well, what do you think about these cell phone fiends? That would be right. Like objection, hearsay. Like, he doesn't know anything about that. Like, he's here for this.
You have to be within the realm of your expertise.
Right. And so, like, if you're not, well, he can't just, like, I guess in a depot you can, but at a trial, you can't just like answer a question and then you have to say yes or no. And then but you can't just like, yeah, well, the coroner, he did that. He did that, but it really wasn't relevant because of the A, B, C, and D. And like, we don't know, but we do know what we have from Cicero at the moment. So I don't know that. And I've tried really hard to separate the thought of like the cell phone meaning anything. Even if it was turned on at 4:33 a.m., what does that have to do with their time of death and like them dying where they were found? That automatically means their bodies had to be taken away and they were murdered somewhere else and then brought back and murdered there later on.
Well, that's the defense's theory, is that the body was removed from the area and then brought back, which is, to me, utterly ridiculous. It's like, why would you put a body back where it's being highly searched even at night? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. You would think that you would, put the body somewhere else if you were going to do that. You wouldn't put it. I mean, that's like an abduction. That's.
Well, what kind of ceremony is that? I've never heard of a ceremony like that where it's like.
There's not.
Like they take them and they kill them somewhere else and then they bring them back. Like, the ceremony is literally in if you're talking about a bloat, like. It's usually with Odin. I mean, it's a personal sacrifice. Like, literally the picture of Odin is the epitome of him sacrificing himself unto himself by piercing his side with the spear and hanging upside down into the 9, realms of whatever to gain the knowledge that the runes would provide. That's a self-sacrifice. Yes, if you go back in time in any kind of culture, you're going to find human sacrifice if you go back far enough. But like, it's not relevant to today's day and age on the whole. And then for her to come out and just say like Satanist, like that was one of the things that was, quote, Satanistic ideologies. They do a lot of ritual murders. What? Where? What are some? What are these? A lot of Satanists that are doing ritual murders in modern culture. That's here's the other thing. Like this is my main point because I did do a ton of research on um, the um, the villages in Laos and Guyana, and from the perspective of I'm born and raised here, modern society, modern culture. But so when we look at what a village that has been untouched by modernization, and we look at what they're doing with sacrificing children for the cause of the village, like we are looking like that is where anthropological methodologies could come in handy. Is if all of a sudden you take that village that lives in the middle of Laos and Guyana and all these different parts of Asia and Africa, and you transplant them into the United States, and then they go about doing their culturally accepted normal behaviors of, well, the baby was born breech, therefore the medicine, it's going to bring bad luck on my family. So I'm going to have to give my child to the medicine man, and they're going to kill it by banging it on a tree. This, I'm talking about real life. This is a real true stories. This is a cultural thing that we as Americans do not understand. So imagine if they got transplanted here into the middle of Indiana, and then they were doing their things. Well, yeah, an anthropological methodologies expert like Dr. Perlmutter would be amazingly helpful in that situation, because she is going to help people understand the culture, the religious culture, or all of those things of why they're doing what they're doing, not necessarily that they're doing them out of there is no drive for murder. There is no drive for the killing of another human being. This is survive. We have to do this in order to survive. So they don't view it as, like we do. Like they just murdered that baby in the most vicious way. Like they killed this little girl because her boobs were small and the dad was losing his money on Fridays when he came home. So they blame it on, this is cultural things. Even when the Catholics came in and missionaries came into these villages, they didn't, it didn't bring enough of a cultural thing. So they take a painting of the Passover and they still go to their same, things, which is voodoo. Then they bang the Passover painting on each person's head. So they're incorporating what the missionaries left with them on modern, religions into their ancient way of life. Like, I just fail to see how it applies to United States citizens that didn't grow up in a place like what I'm explaining.
Right.
Does that make any sense?
No, you're making great sense, but also just to put it in the scope of saying that this particular these murders were ritualistic in nature. Okay, well then show me other evidence in this area. We'll just say a 2-hour, 3-hour, perimeter. What do you have that shows that similar things are happening in the name of Odin? I don't think they can come up with something. Hence, that would make it not ritualistic. And even if it's like, well, but this is what we want to start doing. So we went from animals and now we're going to graduate to humans. Okay, what have we seen since?
Right.
And you're not going to find anything. Hence, it doesn't make it ritualistic. You could say it was the beginning of something ritualistic, or so they attempted to do. But then why would you do it in that area where people, especially on a seasonably warm day for winter in February? Why would you do that when people are going to be out and about? It doesn't make any sense, because those rituals are going to take time. I believe, in this case, the killer, and I believe it was one, did what he was going to do, but he also wasn't planning on lingering around either. I don't think that was the plan. It was to do what he wanted to do and go. So, Yeah, the ritualistic aspect of that, with everything, with the environment, everything there, I just don't see it. And I haven't seen, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe someone can point to a news article anywhere in Indiana or even in neighboring states that show similar crimes that have happened either, you know, a year before or a couple years after. That's textbook the same thing. There's runes on trees,
No,
bloody runes from blood and things like that. I just don't think anyone's going to be able, unless they're going to assume things on that too, and not show that it's definitively linked to any kind of Norse
yeah,
paganism or Odinism or what have you.
yeah. But yeah, I mean it's I don't I mean that ritualistic homicide isn't a it's obviously a path of
Mhm.
study. Like you can, but to only look at it, and I would think that you would be a much better expert if you were able to understand that like psychopathology and how this would play a role. Because if you look at some, like, can you imagine if they, like, to me, this is what she does is to explain and excuse the behavior in a cultural and a religious manner. What good does that do these suspects? Like, that's what her expertise is supposed to be about. What I just explained a few minutes ago in length. Like, that's what that is, a study of humanities and that's crossing over like a cultural time and distance and society and modernism and all of these things. So it's like, what why would this even be the motive of like that, of the true nature of a human sacrifice and a ritualistic killing? Like, what would be their purpose? And I just thought it was super disrespectful when she, because she seems like she just wanted to be right. Even though she had to admit that she didn't even look at everything. She didn't look at it from a purview of anything about other than what the defense gave her. And if a defense, and I'm an expert and the defense gave me, I'm going to be like, where's this? Where's that? Where's this part? Where's this part? I'm going to be asking wherever all of the evidence is that they didn't supply me. And I'm going to be asking why? Why didn't you give me all of this? Want my opinion, or do you want me to just say and parrot what you want me to say? Like that right there, regardless of whether you think of third party, everybody on both sides should have been really upset that this supposed expert that they hired didn't do a thorough job. She didn't do a thorough job of this crime scene. She just came in, and there, you can look it up. There are several cases where she has done this very thing. And I have them all, and I'll make a whole nother live about that.
Well, and she, the unwillingness to say, I made a mistake, or sometimes you have to adapt your thinking based on the facts that you have. For example, a couple of years ago, especially when this whole murder sheet thing was especially going deep and heavy with the Kleins, and then the fresh arrest of Richard Allen. And when I looked at it, I was like, man, there has to be a connection there. And I thought the connection would be because they searched that river in Wabash, after Klein gave a tip regarding that. And then just about a week later or so, was it about a week later? I think it was about a week later, 2 weeks later, then Richard Allen is arrested. And then, of course, there was previous statements about how, Kagan looked up a gas station, which was not very far from where Richard Allen lived. And
Mhm.
I went short of saying it is connected, but what I put there is like, man, it would have to be a Texas size coincidence if it's not.
Yeah.
Well, guess, and I wasn't the only one who thought that too. Gray Hughes thought it as well. Other people, like, there has to be a connection. But what do? When the facts come out and they face us, we have no other choice, if you believe in truth, to say, oh, it looks like that wasn't connected after all. Kagan is a pathological liar. He threw the cops in a wild goose chase, and it just happened by coincidence, by relooking through files and looking through things again, they found Richard Allen again. So coincidences, they do happen and they do exist. And you have to be open to say, oh, yeah, I thought that was probably the case, but it's not. I was mistaken. The fact that and here's the thing that they might be asking, Nick may have been asking that question to Perlmutter because as far as we know, Richard Allen may have given consistent statements to why he did what he did, as far as those sticks go. And that might be why Nick wants to ask those questions to Perlmutter.
Yeah.
Is because he knows based on, if, again, hypothetically, I don't want to venture too far on conjecture, but if Richard Allen gave some in-depth confessions, not only that the killer would know, but also his reasoning, his motives, those are things that we may not know yet that we will find out at the trial. Maybe.
Right. And I don't know. This was a surprise to me because I'm reading through Cross, right? And Baldwin was very clear with her of we're not going to get into this murder yet. We're not going to get into specifics, just wanting general, let's educate the judge on what we're going to be talking about before we get into specifics. Literally, how many pages was it? 20 some pages of this. I think, I don't even know. I forget, but a lot of pages of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of just her general knowledge. So she's talking about, she brings up, white supremacy and these neo-pagan, racist, violent groups. And she starts, talking about things that we know because at least for the people that have been around with the Delphi case for a long time and what all the channels are, talking about and why Richard Allen isn't the guy because he's not a white nationalist, racist, former Vinlander, or, he doesn't sacrifice people or whatever. So if you've been around for a while, all of these names and Soldiers of Odin, American Guard, Vinlander Social Club, they all come up, right? So I go to do independent research on Perlmutter in case decks and Justia, and I find I haven't read the whole thing because it was super long, but it was on Perlmutter testifying against Antifa for assaulting the American Guard, literally the American Guard members, a member of the American Guard. And the picture, in this appeal, they're pictured. I was like, what in the world is going on? So yeah, she has I would think that would come into play of about, but yes, she did. She testified, because they're basically it was an assault charge and she made it about, the hate, a hate crime or whatever, which, I mean, it really kind of is. I don't know. I haven't read the whole thing, but yeah, it's definitely a hate crime. Antifa is a hate group. They're just on the opposite side, which is kind of reminiscent of what we see. It's called extremism. And that's what I feel like we have in this Delphi sphere, which has been about the Delphi sphere and not about the actual crimes that have taken place in the trial that is upcoming. And a man's life is on the line here. And 2 girls will never have another day of life again from that day forward. That's what it's really all about. Instead, it's became these extremist groups, just like Antifa and the neo-Nazis of the American Guard. I don't care how they want to word themselves, how if they want to call themselves Ostrua or Odin or whatever. These local warriors they're doing whatever they're doing. They're infiltrating a religion to fit their narrative because they like the symbols of it. They like that it's goes back to pre-Christian. There's the warrior, the sphere of Odin. There's all of these things, but they're really incorporating that into their what they really are at the end of the day is a bunch of racist, anti-Semitic meatballs that are violent. They are violent, and they have injured, they have hurt people, they have killed people, but they definitely haven't killed people in this manner. There's no pattern of that whatsoever. Like, it's just wild. Like, but no, like, I don't want to. I don't think that anyone should be accused of a double homicide of two girls, of two like children, and just willy nilly and court filings. But I definitely don't. I don't want to have any association with any of those guys. I lost my friend to one of those members. We were great friends. She married one of them, and I saw her at a rally, like attending a rally. And I'm like, I can't, like, I'm not going to be, if you're going to go with your husband and like take on his views and ideologies and, you know, and they're that extreme of like hate and racism and all of the thing, like, I can't be friends with you anymore. So I get it. I get this stuff, but like, no, I'm not going to like support them, but it's also not right. So it's like a really tricky sitch because you feel like they're crappy people. I'm sorry.
Well,
It's
and look,
crappy
this
people.
this was an angle that at least was considered. It just
It
didn't pan out
was.
because
Definitely
you
was.
because you have to place the men there, and you can't do that. You factually cannot do that. And
Yeah.
people can do a bunch of mental gymnastics to try to place them there, but you need evidence for that, and they don't have it. And so at the end of the day, it's I'm sorry, the Odinism thing, it doesn't work. There's nothing there that fits for me. Um,
Hmm.
I understand it's something. I mean, it was considered, and we all need to acknowledge that. But at the end of the day, Elvis Fields, Westfall, Holder, it's like, I'm sorry, you can't connect them there. You just can't do it. You can't connect the Kleins there, and you just can't do it. But you know who
Yeah.
you can connect there based on their own mouth and based on other witnesses who saw
Hmm.
someone fitting his description? you know it's like, you have
Right.
witnesses about Alan. You have Alan who places himself there, that we know. So
Well,
that,
like I said, attack the facts.
right, and that's exactly
Attack
what
the
they're doing.
facts. And I said that one time and got kind of laughed at about it. But I'm like, it's really that simple. It really, I know we want to, overcomplicate it and make it all this. But like I said, the motion in limine was based on all the Franks hearings. So McClellan just smartly said, let's like, and they held a hearing on the motions of limine, which is a totally normal court procedure. This is all normal things that happen, that juries don't see everything. Can you imagine
Mhm.
if they did? You would, for a 6-something year investigation, to go down every inquiry line. It's not plausible. But when you put emotionality into it and of like, oh my God, like, look at this, look at this, look at this, look what we don't have, then you can be like, oh my gosh, he's not going to get a fair trial. But they should have just third party. We should be able to talk about third party because look how you filed this, or look how you filed it. You guys thought that there was a lot. They would go to a great extent for a long period of time. Something happened in 2019 at that presser. They said persons are persons. Each one of them, no matter who was being interviewed, as far as law enforcement or, government positions on this case, they would take the time to say person or persons, suspect or suspects. And then it was kind of that thing of like, well, did they just drop doing that because it's just a lot? It's like a lot of words to say, or did they stop doing that because of like what at the 2019 presser when Doug Carter was like, "We're changing. You never thought that we would go." What did he say?
Change our strategy.
Yeah, investigative strategy, and we have, which is called reframing in investigative technique. Like it's a whole thing you can look up. It's called reframing, and they do that for bias sake. And so like they did that, and he's like, you never thought we would, but like how you left them in those woods are not how they are today. And I think that Doug Carter is a religious man, and like that's what that was really about. But he was also telling, like, they put up this new sketch, attack those things, like these sketches are wild. I hate sketches. You know, like, but so they say in this press conference that this is the new suspect, right? This young frizzy haired kid. But then Doug Carter goes on a channel like the next day and is like, well, if you merge the two together, you know, they were very unclear. They didn't make cohesive statements about these wild sketches. I mean, I get, like, I don't know, the nose, there's features of them that are the same. But
Yeah.
sketches to me are moot. To
To
find
me,
out that they didn't even want to do the sketches, the witnesses, like, why would we do sketches when you have a video of them?
to
Like,
me, the sketches were, I mean, my opinion, and I'm going to use that word, my opinion, because someone might, maybe even you might come up with a better argument, or someone else, but it's a complete waste of time. I understand, have them for some kind of reference, but
no,
how many times when someone may have, not by law enforcement necessarily, but by public opinion, when someone would come out, they would say, oh, he looks just like the sketch. He looks just like the sketch. And it's like, you think it looks like the sketch, but it's not. And again, I go back to the Golden State Killer when he was known as the East Side Rapist or the East Area Rapist. There were sketches of him. Look nothing like him. Even at that time period when he was working as a police officer, look nothing like him. It's like it was through other means that they caught him, and it sure as hell wasn't because of a sketch.
right.
And I look at those two sketches, and
They're gonna have to explain those sketches, like, unless it's gonna be it was an emotion in limine, like, they're gonna have, like, what in the hell?
I mean, yeah, I mean, generally you can look at that now and say, yeah, I can kind of see how maybe the older one looks like Richard Allen. The young one, I'm not sure about. But again, that's just generality. Like, that's not scientific to me.
Right.
Like, it's
And you
just,
know what's
it's reference.
interesting? Is one of the young victim, like, not victim, the young witnesses.
Mhm.
Her mother was were you in that group? Doug Rice Facebook group?
No.
Her mother was in the group, and then, like, Doug would ask her questions. She would post, like, the picture of her girls on the bench and, like, how close they came to the Abby and Libby could have been her two daughters that were out there that day. So they're the witnesses. And Doug was like, well, why aren't we sending them, you know, sending them suspects? So one early on, and he remained so for a long time. And the case is insane. It's disgusting. It's sick that he's not a registered child predator and he's out. But so Doug sent her a picture of this guy, and she asked her daughter, and her daughter was like, that was the only one that Doug had, like, shared with this mother that he had gotten close to, that was like, yes, my daughters both were like, that really looks like the guy they saw. Most of the other ones were like a big no, you know. But this one particular one, and what's crazy is if you would Richard Allen next to each other, yeah, I'll remind me to send you that picture of this guy
Yeah,
that I'm talking about.
please
And,
do.
like, yeah, it's pretty uncanny that a witness back in, I don't know when this happened, maybe 2017, 2018, was like, yeah, that really looks like the guy I saw, you know, and that guy just so happened to look a real lot, really like Richard Allen, you know, and the mom
Mhm.
said, she was like, they wouldn't say that it's for sure him. They just said there's a resemblance there. Like,
Right.
he looks like that person. And this was over the sketch. You know, this wasn't having anything to do with the sketch, which I think that was one of the things that Doug was like, what are we doing here? You know, we have this image, you know, but I don't know. And then, you know, Carter getting all into the gate. What? It's a bridge. It's a rickety old bridge that was like dry rotting. Like, you can't, I don't know. There's just so much that the defense, I feel like they drop the ball, and I don't understand why they don't get, why people that are really truly interested in Richard being in a really believe that he is, and that his rights as a human have been violated. Like, why are they not upset with the defense right now, especially after these trials? Because I'm not even a pro or either one, but I'm upset. Like, I don't I don't give two flying F's about the dude. I don't think his human rights have been violated.
No.
I don't. Like solitary confinement it's not going to move me off my square. Like you're not going to get me on emotionality. It unless you want to talk generalization of the way we treat other humans in our criminal justice system, then I'm all the way down for that. But to get specific to like this guy, no.
Well, look, and even in places like North Carolina, when it comes to safekeeping orders, look, this is a real thing. And a superior or a district court judge, they may transfer an inmate from a local jail to the state prison for various reasons, in which one of those reasons actually attributed to Richard Allen and needs to be protected from other inmates. What was one of the situations was there was overpopulation in that county jail, so they got to move him. And there's other things like exhibits violently aggressive behavior. I don't think that's necessarily the case here, although he could be, non-compliant at times, pose a serious, escape risk. I don't think that was a situation. And he's certainly not 18 years of age or younger, and he's not pregnant, so that has nothing to do with it. But I think the needs to be protected from other inmates was a huge one due to the overpopulation that was going on in the county jail. That's why he was taken to a state prison, which he also then would have the right kind of medical care, which he would not have at a county jail. I don't see. I guess I'm just made of different substance, I guess, where I look at that and I go, I don't see an issue here. This is a high profile case. There are people, because believe it or not, other felons do have some kind of certain standards to where they look, I'll do this. I'll be this bad, but I wouldn't kill kids.
Do you remember, what's his name? Chauvin. Derek Chauvin? Ring a bell?
Names sounds familiar.
Yeah, the guy that George Floyd. Was there anyone out there trumpeting for his innocence because he was held in an actual maximum security prison as a pretrial detainee for his own safety? But he was in basically like, or what was the one, R. Kelly, or like all of these other people, like high profile people that were held in the same conditions as Richard Allen. Like this isn't specific to him. This isn't some, if you want to fight against that, then do it as a whole. Because I really do think it sucks. And I'm coming from a place of, I have researched and studied prisons in other countries. Like there's a ton of research out. There's whole projects that are dedicated to this. You can find them on YouTube. But this has been a long time, like, thing of mine of wanting to understand our criminal justice system, and especially the way we imprison people because of the revolving door of it and what can be applied to change that as far as recidivism and the comparison of our judicial system compared to Canada and, in places in Europe versus Russia. Oh, talk about terrifying. Or Mexico. Mm-hmm. Like you want to get into some pre or not. Look up the suicide rate in Indiana in pre-trial detainees in jails. They don't have the means to protect them. So there's no violation of his civil liberties by him being arrested and indicted on this based on the probable cause. Like I say all the time, they could have held a hearing to see if he could get bail, but they didn't. They canceled it. And like, I don't understand it when people are like, they don't want all of these security measures in place for him. I don't understand that. Like, that seems to be, what's that called? Like a oxymoron.
Right.
It's oxymoronic to me of like, you got on the one hand, he's being tortured and come to find out he's the one saying like, well, I think they're making all this noise and turning the lights on and targeting me. And he is in a different pod than where the noise and the lights really are. If you think about it, or the noise and the lights in a jail, like insane, like he would like, So he's like thinking that this is like they're doing this when this is just prison. This is just jail. This is how it is. You can go and watch. There's tons of documentaries and series and movies, like real, true, nonfiction books you can read on this topic.
Right.
So it's, and then just the filigree of it, of like looking past what they say and what they clearly want to draw you into. Like, I feel like with these hearings, they were not for Richard Allen. Like, well, maybe, but they were not for the judge. They weren't for law and order and the rules of evidence. Like,
Do you think it was to possibly just try to influence a jury pool with these type of statements?
I think it's to influence the people that attended,
Mm-hmm.
the public that's going to read these transcripts, and the public that attended, and because all I know is when I'm hearing things, and I'm hearing things that are asked, like Judge Gold's getting raked over the coals, which, I don't really care. I don't think we'd be friends. I really don't. I don't think I'd like her. But like that she got a little like feisty in one of her like orders, but what is there that like couldn't be argued the other way in a court of appeals, even on some of the main things? Like, I read those for fun, so I know, and like when you read them, you're just like, holy shit. Like, because they will go, especially in the higher courts, when it goes all the way to the top, sometimes there are hundreds and hundreds of pages of opinion by all of these different justices, that weigh in on this. And then you get to the end, you're just like, yeah, like they found a way to wiggle right around that, where, in the cases with Perlmutter that I was just reading, like where she has testified, or where the defense has wanted to call her as an expert witness in a murder trial, in two particular ones, and I'm just like, what in the actual hell? Oh, guess what? It goes against what she said, what she demanded, that the like these types of ritualistic homicides are going to be outdoors for these types of particular, like, well, why would her testimony change from this, what she's saying about ritualistic homicide versus the two drug addicts, like the two crackheads that like brutally murdered a man in a hotel room, because she said that was a ritualistic homicide as well, and it had to do with like this base religion. Like, I'm just like, what? This doesn't make any sense. I don't know. I just think it applies if, like I said, her testimony would be totally applicable, and I would pay it. We're talking about in homicide, not the crime scene like in other crimes. I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about homicide. Like, if you want to apply that homicide to if we brought a Laos village and implanted them in middle in Indiana, like, it would be completely applicable to understand their culture as to why they do the things they do. The humanities, the culture, the religion, the societal differences, to understanding why this happened. Perfect.
Right. But we're dealing with
these guys,
apples and oranges. Yeah, the whole thing is
their supply. They don't have a cultural background in Nordic religion whatsoever. It's an adopted into, like, that's why it's neo, right? But I don't know. I don't know. But if you can't prove like certain key things, okay, so you want to attack the timeline of when they were dead. If that's all you have is that, say, a coroner, which I don't know. I've listened to so many murder trials in so many cases and read so many books, and where time of death cannot be established based on, oh, this body, we don't know. We think, like, literally just watched a whole entire trial. His name is what's his name? God, creepiest looking dude. But he was like a reserve police officer, and he was also like the patrol in this apartment complex. And he kidnapped this girl, and they did use his phone. Her phone had Life 360 on it, and her body was not found for months later. But they had determined that she had died the night that she had found, based on a determination of a window from the pathologist. You don't have just like the pathologist, you have the crime scene of the experts, the analysts, the lab, like all these people weigh in on things like time of death, to where that is just not a smoky gun. It's not. The
Well,
phone turning on at 4:30 means that the time of death is off. How? And why is that even relevant? Why couldn't the killers have just simply brought the phone? Oh my gosh, they take the phone home and they realize that they have it. And they're like, holy shit, we got to get rid of this. Maybe the phone had been off. I don't know. I don't
well,
understand that avenue of, I'm doing a whole live on it though. I've got
well,
it all built.
I can give you another example. Michaela Dimer, she was murdered and raped in 2014 in Ohio, very close to where I live. And the crime was committed by Ronald Hillman. And Ronald Hillman was released from prison from a rape he committed from gunpoint to the woman. I think he was in there for like 6 years, and he got out. And this man did what he did to Michaela, and he did it in an abandoned house. And then he took her a couple miles away to an open field over by Train Avenue in Cleveland, Ohio. And basically at this point, because he stole her, at this point, he stole her car. At that point, was driving it around. That's how he was caught. And then he confessed to the crime of what he did. But this is about a little over a month later from when the crime happened to when he was caught and he confessed to the crime, and told him what happened. But they had to do everything based on his word, because they could not determine, because of how the body condition was, they could not determine exactly when she died, so they couldn't pinpoint it to a certain date, and they couldn't even pinpoint the cause of death.
Right.
They couldn't do that either. So those things do happen. Now, granted, they did find Abby and Libby, a little less than 24 hours later. So I understand there's going to be a little more,
right,
I guess, lack of a better word, freshness.
It's a valid, I mean, I don't know. I am still like, I'm in this awesome, it's a Delphi Facebook group. It's been around for a while, and it's kind of morphed as things, the culture of the Delphi online like Facebook community anyway, because I'm not in all the other ones. I can't handle that. I'm too old for Discord and Reddit, and like I will go to it when someone tells me like, hey, go look at this. But other than that, like web sleuths, Reddit, like I can't. So the Facebook groups, there's one that, I mean, they're just amazing. It's a very small group and not a lot of people are allowed in it, but we talk about these questions, and someone, a guy in there who constantly, he just brings up really great like points of discussion, and the point of discussion was on the geofence stuff. And I'm like, so I have like a whole episode based on this group's like, what is all being, talked about in this group, and like just trying to figure things out from not like like there's people in there that are, none of it, like not all of us agree, like, as far as guilt or innocence, which I don't know why we're even talking about guilt or innocence, other than it's just like the culture of the justice system that we live in, to not be pro defendant in murder. I feel like that's a normal bias to have, and it's going to take a lot to move me off that if I don't know the ins and outs. And the prosecution has been pretty tight-lipped, even though they've let some things out. Like we don't know everything that they have. We just don't. We don't know the contents of the confessions. But regardless, because those are secondary to me, what is it that they have that the defense wants suppressed so badly They've wanted that suppressed. That's what all the Franks are about. There's 4 Franks for the suppression of the fruits of the search warrant. And the tactics that they've gone to, like the leaps and jumps that they've made as far as like exculpatory evidence and things like that, is just like, it's pretty wild. It sounds really bad, and I emotionally am pissed off about it. But when you get into the technicality of law, of good faith, and like all of the criminal code and procedure, it falls apart, regardless of how we emotionally feel about it. Because that's not what the system that we have in place is set up, is designed for how you feel about the way someone's treated, or how you feel about things that, so they've had this whole hearing, right? So they wanted this Frank's hearing, but they didn't ever present anything enough for there to be granted a Frank's hearing. It was just all of the same stuff that came out in this motion in limine. And so that was denied. But it was the Frank's hearing was supposed to be for the suppression of the fruits of the search warrant of what they found at Richard Allen's house. We don't know what they found at his house. The defense wants it suppressed really bad, right?
Right.
And even Libretto danced around it. There's nothing that like, as far as, forensic, that forensically links Richard Allen to the crime scene. Where has the defense, or where has anyone said that there's nothing that links Richard Allen to the girls? To like, was there something for a forensic value that they found in the fruits of the search warrant that we don't know about? And then that's one of the main things for me, is like, what is, if there's nothing? But again, I said at the top of the show, cumulative. That's what these trials are based on, is a cumulative, not just one little aspect. Not
Right.
Crime of death, not autopsy, not pathologist, not crime scene analyst, not blood splatter, not all the mistakes that were made, not all of the lines of inquiry, not like, it's based on a totality of the rhythm of a trial. Like, they just, there's a lot of like, it's a, establish when did this police officer come across, scene, you get like, well, I was the first one there. We got a 911 call, and then we were dispatched to the scene. We quickly realized it was a crime scene, so we called in the crime, the lab, like, and then you proceed through it like that. That's And there's not a lot of room for all of this other ridiculous stuff. And especially if you can't prove that there is something of criminal, like, evidentiary value in these third-party suspects that you have been talking about in your Frank's filing for years. And now we're going to have a motion in limine, which is like, I want this excluded because it doesn't have any evidentiary value. Instead of just saying, well, the prosecutor must think that there's somebody else involved. The facts, like I said. So now we've gone down this third party, and now it's out, and people are mad, even though Judge Gold did leave a caveat, if you will, for proof, which she's done with the defense several different times throughout this whole thing of like, okay, well, prove it, offer of proof. I'm going to give you, you have an offer of proof. If you can prove that BH was, not at work, and somebody else, if you can get someone to, like, that would be considered at trial. Like, say they get someone that says, oh yeah, we clocked in for him all day long, in and out in the morning, in and out at lunch, and at the end of the day, and we've been lying about it. Like,
all right. Like, I mean, you would think that would make sense. Mm-hmm. To answer a question in the chat, DB wrote, so they couldn't determine the time of death medically in another case, so that makes it fine in this case. Yes, absolutely. Because of that, every case it should not be determined when a death occurred, and so that's my conclusion. Of course, I'm being facetious. Anytime you can determine the cause of death in the tightest window as you can, of course you want
Oh
to do
yeah.
that. What
Yeah.
we're explaining is that there are cases to where that does happen, where you cannot determine the exact time of death, or there might be a larger window of when that occurred. It may not be exactly within an hour, within a half hour, within minutes. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. um, we have to work with what we got. I mean, even
Yeah.
an aging of
That's not
ancient
what I
bones, even
not my point.
aging of ancient bones. Sometimes they can't
Yeah.
say exactly when. They put it in a time frame. If anyone remembered
Your
when Mora,
scientist isn't going to give you an exact time of death. They're going to give you a window
right,
anyway.
you
And
know,
where you're going to get an exact time of death is if a doctor is present at the time of death.
right, well,
That's
exactly.
literally it.
Well, like in that in a in a more when they thought maybe it was a break in the Maura Murray case a couple of years ago, bone fragments were found over in Loon Mountain in New Hampshire, and
Okay.
they were dating those bones within certain windows that it could have been from initially the 1940s
Hmm.
to 2000. I think that basically anywhere between 70 to like 20 years old. That's a huge difference. Someone who's 20 and 70 years old, that is hugely different. And
Yeah.
they do the same thing when it comes to other ancient bones, whether it's dinosaur bone fossils, things like that. You can only date things within a certain period of time, even ancient cities, and so they'll put it within a certain time frame, a window, as you would say. It's every
Yeah.
yeah, it would be great if everything can be exact, but like you said, unless a doctor is right there, it's a cancer patient in their bed, or someone of a terminal illness or what have you, or they got shot or mortally wounded and there's a doctor there, then yes, they can determine the time of death. But even with the Titan submersible that imploded last year, they can only put that within a certain window of when that happened. Now, granted, that's a tighter window, uh,
Right.
but they say
Yeah.
estimated. It is estimated. That's just how these things are. That's not an excuse. That's the reality.
Yeah. Yeah. It really just is. And like, obviously, if you can, you know, there's many appeals where the time of death has been attacked in the appeals process. So it's not just a straightforward answer, but it better, come out in trial. And I'm just saying, like, if you take off your emotions about it and you think about just the time of death, like, how is this a credible thing to throw to allow in all of this third party stuff with these very specific Odinism, Norse pagan, the Ostru, the vocabulary of what they've called them from the time they first started filing about them, from Odinites to Odinism, and now they're calling in their newest filings, it's Ostrua or however the hell you say it. But like, take out that and you look at everything else. I don't understand. I just don't understand where the phone and the why is it I would be super stupid for obviously for the killer to take the phone. Like in that other trial I watched, he realized that her phone abruptly stops the Life 360, which is geofencing. It abruptly stops because he threw it out the window, and they were able to prove that in the trial, and he was found guilty. I mean, just a complete monster of a human being of like what he, ugh. But a lot of the case was built on the Life 360. And obviously, there was a lot of other cumulative evidence that they had, physical, circumstantial, everything. Like, but why is it that because if say the phone was, why does that mean that the phone was brought back with the bodies? Why does the phone determine being on or off or turning back on? There's, why does that go hand in hand with the death of the two victims?
And
I
just
don't know.
Occam's
I don't know if I'm
razor.
not
Oc-
phrasing this right of what I'm trying to
no,
say.
But like Occam's razor is another way to look at this. So let's look at the simplest explanation. We know that bridge guy ordered the girls down the hill. Where did we
Right.
find them? Not far from down the hill. That's where they were found the next day. So,
Yeah.
okay, that's the simplest explanation. But now let's look at what the defense wants to say. Okay, we know of one person, but now they think maybe it could be up to 7 people who did this. And they were, if you listen to what Murphy was saying, like, oh, which doesn't make sense. They were there and they were making fun of the ritual and they got mad and that's what happened. Of course, that's Murphy's interpretation, which is,
Right.
not substantiated. But let me ignore that. So, okay, so there's a group of people and now they're taking them somewhere else to commit this ritual sacrifice. So they do that. And now they know that they just kidnapped, abducted, and now murdered or sacrificed 2 girls.
Right.
And so, hey, let's keep this where everyone's looking for them. And then let's come back sometime, around a little after 4 o'clock. Let's go ahead. Let's put them back over in this section and we'll just put them there so they can be found. And then we'll stage them and everything. That is not realistic, because of the chances of getting caught are so much more significant.
Mm-hmm.
Versus if you commit the crime there and you flee the scene. You committed, you did what you wanted to do, and now you leave. And we only know of one person, and that's the one person that ordered them down the hill. These are the
Mm-hmm.
simplest explanations. There's nothing to indicate that it was 7 people. Like this argument that I hear Rick Snay make, that there's no way that one guy could have carried them or did this. It's like it happened there. And I think he is fully capable, and I say this with all due respect, of
Former military too, so there's specified training in carrying a dead weight.
Right. It's like
It doesn't even look like they were carried. They were just like kind of
dragged.
Like,
They dragged. And so I don't see anything where he is not capable of doing that. What is there? Is the guy in the wheelchair? No, he's not. Maybe if he was in a wheelchair, I might have to say, yeah, I think that would be pretty difficult to do. I might have to question that.
Yeah.
No, he wasn't. The dude was brave enough and bold enough to walk, across that bridge. I couldn't do that. I'm 6'2". I am in great physical shape, and I couldn't do that. He did. He was able to do that with no problems whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I've done experiments on another case with my own daughter. I'm like, is it possible? Because sometimes when you hear things that you're just like, oh, this doesn't sound logically possible to me. Like when the defense, I think it was maybe in their first or second Franks, I think probably the first, where they were like, this one guy was able to do all of these things within this tiny little time window, right? It doesn't sound plausible, right? It just doesn't. But that's the job of the prosecution to prove, how it is possible. I was kind of just like, I don't know. The geofencing is the stuff that is where I'm stuck at right now. I mean, and I just like, I can't, them not downloading Brad Holder's phone. Like, huh? Can you imagine if they did that for every single person? Like, say a child is because they were missing.
Mm-hmm.
And so they went to her boyfriend, his son, and like, obviously they're going to want to, see if they can find them, but to go and imagine if the police came to you and they were like, well, we looked at your Facebook and we see that you lives and that you own a gun, and that you like this, you practice this particular religion. And like, we saw this on your Facebook that you're friends with this person, who's friends with this person, who's friends with that person, who's in this group, who have their girlfriend said that her husband got drunk and said that his friend said that he wanted to up the ante. Like, can you imagine if that may be an investigative lead? You just have to follow through until, oh, well, it falls apart when, like basic evidentiary things can't be established. There's a lot of cases that will be pending for forever over this, which is unfortunate, you know, like that are probably they're solved, but they're not, they can't be adjudicated for whatever reason or not. Prosecutor's not going to move forward. He may have called, there's ones that I know of, called grand juries, see if we got it. Nope. Grand jury says no, you know, but they believe they have their person, and more than likely they do. But in a court of law, they can't prove it. So just, I don't know. To me, that is just the sleuthing, the Facebook groups, the online. Like I did all of that. Like, oh my gosh, like look at this. You know, they all wear Thor's hammers. They all have, they look at these Vinlanders, this Trump route, like going through all of it. But if you don't have what is a different word for nexus? Because I can't say that word. Like I can't. Because there's an actual word for like a better word for nexus when it applies to criminal law.
I mean, I'll just throw out some words: connection, threads. Like
just basic evidence, just like evidentiary, like
And look, and despite anything about Odinism itself, going to Elvis Field, his phone record showed that he was in Rushville from 10:30 a.m. until 7:30 p.m. And then, of course, with Brad Holder, we know he was at work. What was that, about a half hour? Like Logansport is about a half hour away from Delphi, give or take, or at least where the Monon Bridge is.
From
Logansport to where he was, or wherever he was working.
I think it's like a little less than I don't know, something like 28 to 30 some.
Well, his job was somewhere else. It wasn't Logansport.
Liberty Landfill.
Liberty Landfill. So from that location, I believe it was about a half hour away, but he's at work and he didn't do it on his lunch break, and he didn't, and then of course he went to go work out after the fact. And we know that because the key fob showed that, he was going there and he tagged in. So we have those things. And of course, in Rushville, I know Rushville to the Monon High Bridge, that's 129 miles. So roughly, I guess, depending on what route you want to take, like maybe 2 hours and 11 minutes drive per Google Maps. Like, I'm sorry, I don't see anything here that indicates that. And it's the same with the Kleins. It's the same thing with that. They're not good.
You told that big story, and people are just like all about like dismissing this in-depth story of Kagan Klein and his dad driving to the cemetery. Like they were just like, yeah, that totally, like, that's so dumb. Like, how is that dumb, but this isn't? Because it fits,
right?
Like what the defense wants you to believe, like,
right. We don't want to believe phone data, and we don't want to believe other
drunk, except for the one that wasn't released that looks like Elvis Fields, even though I can make it look like half my family members.
Well, right, but like also like, they don't want to believe
non-saving day. Like
they don't want to believe in phone data in one aspect, but they want to believe in the phone data that places the Kleins in their home in Peru, Indiana, and not just their phones being there, but activity. And that was happening around the time of the murders. So you're going to get some stubborn people who may not believe in the Odinist thing that are going to stick with the Kleins, the same way that people are going to stick with Ron Logan and don't believe in maybe the Odinist thing or the Kleins thing, or they try to lump it all together and say they're all connected in this vast conspiracy. You're going to have those kind of people too. But that's the thing. It's always different things that just don't work. The Richard Allen thing, based on the evidence that I see, is the only viable thing that I see works. Now, can my mind change on that? It's very possible. I don't think it's likely, but I will not say no, because if those confessions are extremely weak and they're all contradictory and there is nothing to indicate that he knew things that, happened at the crime, I wouldn't say that, well, he's innocent, but I would say, I don't know if you have enough. I don't know if that in itself, as far as the confessions go, but there are other things. The timeline is still interesting. You can't overlook the timelines, but now we have to look at the question, well, okay, we just have to base it on inference where it's like, he's bridge guy. You prove he's bridge guy. He's ordering them down the hill. Then you have to assume he's the person that led them to their death. But at that point, you can't assume that he's the only one. I guess you can make that argument if you're the prosecution. You can infer that, sure. But the confessions with the timeline are very important. Yes, if the tool marking analysis with the unspent round, if that can hold up, that would
Yeah.
be interesting. And of course, other forms of evidence we
That
do not
scares
know
me.
at this time.
That scares me. Now, if you have like, say you like, you have you can say, okay, this guy, this 40 cal Smith and Wesson was fired through this, his gun, and that's all you have. Like, as a juror, I'd be like, no,
But see, you could
no,
throw
I
you
would
you
be
could,
so mad
but
because
you could throw that out, but then other things you don't have
I'm
to.
just saying if that's all they had. But
Right.
say they have, okay, we have this unspent round that's found here. Then we went to his home and we found this cartridge, so it's this cartridge, which is a round, and then we found a box of ammunition, and there's two rounds missing, or whatever, like, or what, you know what I'm saying? If there's like other
Right.
little things that they can add to that
Well,
to
and
make
even
it a
if
little bit more substantive, but it's just going to be expert against expert. They better
right.
have more.
But see, they can
Uh,
also potentially use things for totality of evidence. Say, for example,
Cumulative, yes.
now empty DNA is not exact. It's hair.
Mitochondrial?
Yes, and
Yeah.
it's not exact, so you can't say like for with touch DNA, like saliva, blood, bodily fluids, things like that. But for
Autosomal,
example,
yeah.
like that would be tough to, like, let's say if they were to use that against Scott Peterson in the Lacey Peterson trial, you can't really use that because, like, well, they live together. But if you take something and
Yeah.
the astronomical odds of, well, a hair that can't be excluded, either, let's say if it was Richard Allen's hair or let's say his wife's hair, and through secondary transfer ended up on the bodies, that alone will not convict Richard Allen, but you can use that to stockpile and go, what are the coincidences that all of these things, with the confession, with the mtDNA, with the timeline, that's called totality of evidence, where you start to stockpile. You cannot, based on one
Yeah.
thing alone, say that they're guilty. You have to use all these things, and then you have to convince a jury based on that evidence that it is beyond reasonable doubt that you can think of anyone else other than Richard Allen based on what we presented to you. So
Yeah.
even that is possible. Or say if they could match a dog hair or a cat hair or whatever that did belong to Richard Allen.
Yeah.
I know he at one point owned a Chihuahua. I don't know if that was before or after. I know, at least I heard rumors that they dug up an animal. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it's not nothing we can like go to the bank on as like
right.
I've not seen it anywhere. I've heard it, but
But like, yeah, but like, they like in the Amy Mihaljevic case in Avon, where a guy um, knew her phone number. This was a little girl in Bay Village. Knew her, told her to meet him at the square because they were going to pick something out for her mother. She went with him. They went in a
yeah.
car. She was found about 40 minutes away in a field. And there was a piece of evidence found later. It was this green blanket that did not belong to her, but they used that transfer of hair from her dog.
Right.
They knew that was something she was, at one point wrapped in, not at that point, but she was wrapped in at some point. That was found further down. And that was something that was talked about a couple of years ago in another press conference, as far as
Hmm.
if anyone knew what this blanket was and things like that. It's not, you can't say, it's not 100% DNA, but it can be useful, you know, because it's like,
Yeah.
how did that hair that belonged to her dog end up on this blanket, which at this point we are now assuming she was wrapped up in?
Yeah.
Whenever the killer or killers, which at this point we only know is one, dumped her body out in that field.
Yeah.
So it's like I said, not,
Fibers. That's a whole
yeah,
analysis, like lab, like science of hairs and fibers. Remember the
right.
Atlanta child murders,
Hmm.
which I've seen hairs and fibers go like there's one of those things where the cumulative amount of evidence, and like I don't know, I think that really needs to be opened up. They said they were going to do it. Why haven't they followed through? They've had a couple years since they said they were going to open that back up and prove that he was with the technologies. What's his name? The Atlanta child murders guy. He was only found guilty of like 2 murders of adult men, and he is assumed the killer, but he's not actually been tried for the murders of countless, like tons of boys and girls, little like kids. And one of the main things was like a weird fiber of carpet. But like now with the technology we have now, they could go back, and they were supposed to do it and they still haven't done it. So I can see Harrison Fibers going 2 ways, but we're with the technology right now with a hair shaft. This is just outside of, this is biology of like a banana. We are genetically the same as most everything, but those couple percents that make us different are chock full of identifiable information. And the more what we have now, you can take a hair shaft. You don't even need the follicle of the hair and get a profile from that. Like, that's some advancements, and it's only going to get more. So again, though, cumulative, like, would be so great is if we had surveillance that caught this murder on camera, the whole thing from beginning to end, and we were able to just like know for sure, which unfortunately hardly ever happens. Now, if you go over to, what's the one case I just watched, like I think it was in British Columbia. And I mean, they have CCTV everywhere. That's how they solve crimes. And there was one that was like in the, country part. And the detectives were just like befuddled because they didn't have the crime on camera. Like, how are we going to, they don't call them judges in there, but like, how are we going to prove this to the justices? So like, this is wild, but this is America though. Like, you don't get, there's different levels of evidence. That's why it's always just like, you got to have a bunch.
Exactly. And that's where it's different, where it's like when you have something that is,
right. There you go, animal.
Yeah. When you have DNA or when you have something that's on camera, like, it doesn't, as far as evidence goes, it doesn't get any better than that. But a lot of cases aren't like that. There's going to be a lot of murder cases that the murderer did not leave DNA, or that DNA, depending on how things were committed or how long until the body was discovered, where you just can't determine certain things. Like, we can't even, again, going back to the Lacey Peterson thing, we can't say exactly how she was murdered. We just know that she was murdered. We don't know if it was strangulation. We don't know if
I just watched that. Did you just watch that too?
Well, there was 2
documentary on that.
There was 2. There was one on Netflix, and then there was one on Peacock, or was it? Yeah, Peacock. The Peacock, in my opinion, was an absolute joke. It was a sham. I thought the Netflix one did a little bit better job, but they had their narrative.
Yeah.
The Netflix one was pro Lacey Peterson, and the Peacock one, from what I can see,
I feel like the narrative with true crime really started with Stephen Avery.
I actually believe it started. I believe it was the West Memphis 3, and then
more culture on true crime community. Like.
Well, I mean, look, the West Memphis 3 case, the celebrity support. I mean, it was very popular. HBO popularized it, and then with Adnan Syed, they popularized it. Now, that maybe to a lesser extent, yes, but you are right. Netflix, I think it blew up Netflix more than it ever had with Making a Murderer, and with what they did.
But when I watched that, I can just remember like, oh my gosh, the wrong guy. And I don't care about his guilt or not. The young boy, what's his name?
Brandon Dassey.
Brandon Dassey. Like, come on now. I feel the same exact way about Brandon Dassey that I feel about the co-conspirator with Gypsy Rose. Can't remember his name, but there's diminished capacity there. Why are they that to me is a injustice, not based on guilt or innocence, but an injustice of like what our system says. Because even in pre these, diminished capacity or whatever, like they will go back and review those cases to make sure. So like it's not even applicable just like, oh, well, that you can't just say, well, that was in 1994. No, that's not really how the system is designed to work. There are caveats, like there are things like, no, we're not going to convict children to prison for life without parole, which you used to be able to just, could. Then they came along and said no. So now they do have an eligibility for parole automatically because of the age that they were when the offense took place, no matter what, say it was in 80, 90, early 2000. If they were under a certain age, whether they were convicted of life without parole, they're going to now, because of this law, it retrogrades back. But I was looking at the chat. I saw a question that I thought was like pretty good. But it was like a key point. It was Joe Smo. Yeah, this one for one, the Asa True is how you say it. I'm talking about the defense filings. If you read the one of the memorandum in law in support of, which came out after the hearings, they're all about Asa True, when the definitions are, I mean, they're synonymous with each other. Odicism, Asa True. But yeah, you got, Westfall trying to distance himself from it, but he had like, if you sleuthed them on Facebook, like Odinism of like, yeah, they like hail Odin, but then they also like BH will go into like the what's up, Warrior's Path of the Gungri, the Asa True, like there's a lot of things that are like interchangeable with each other. But yeah, I think it's weird that the defense is now so separated from that, even the word Odinism, and why. I would like to know. Yeah, I agree that the murder taking the phone with them is laughable, but it has happened in kidnappings before. And they'll like, it drops out onto the floorboard, like in this situation, yeah, where it's like out in nature. But yeah, it's like happened before. I was just telling you about the murder trial that I watched, where he threw the phone, like he took her and they were able to track basically all of his movements by his phone and then her phone. And like he took her and then he threw the phone out. And it was a big, huge part of the trial of why the phone like abruptly stopped. It went from like 40 miles an hour to a dead ass stop, but it didn't. And it showed up on Life 360 as like a, what was it called? Like I get crash alerts if there's, or hard braking, and it just stopped because he threw it out the window. So murderers do take phones from the crime scene. I just don't think the phone being where the bodies establishes anything. And people that are arguing with me about this are the ones where it would actually benefit their cause. So I don't get that at all.
Well, they need to prove to me that the phone was taken. Prove to me it was taken.
My thing is they could still have been killed, which would make more sense for us if you want to go down that wild out, a ceremonial murder. It would make more sense. Like, but then again, you got to fit it into, if it was on a holiday, then it has to be, at sundown or after. So the 13th on the afternoon doesn't actually fit into a Norse pagan holiday.
Right. But
like sundown, but then it's like, I just don't understand why people are.
They're hypothetical.
For me, a cell phone is circumstantial evidence, and it is very supportive evidence. It can be very supportive, but at the end of the day, like you got to have more than that.
Right. But even the simple fact of whether the phone turned back on or the phone restarted or just certain things were happening with the phone, you have to prove to me, since we're all about this burden of prove prove to me that the phone was moved, taken somewhere else, and brought back,
Yeah.
because where the phone was turned on wasn't somewhere else. It was turned on there. So again, prove to me it was moved. They cannot do it. And to me, it's that's, I mean, Occam's razor. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not saying this is what it was, but have you ever had your phone just, weren't doing anything, your phone just lights up, and you're like, what's going on? Or it even restarts on its
Yeah.
own, and you're like, what the
Or
hell
it'll
is?
update without my permission.
Mm-hmm.
That one always pisses me off because I hate change, so I don't want it to update and all. And but eventually, it just does it without my permission because you have to check 2 different boxes to deny permission to install the latest update while your phone's plugged in, or at night or whatever.
Or the
So I
phone,
know
yeah, or the
that.
phone. Hold on, or the phone had lost some signal, because my understanding there is that the signals there at that area is not the best. At some period of time,
Yeah,
that lost signal, and then it regains signal. And I could tell you over in
and that's in 2017 to 2024. So people forget that.
right.
Like, I know it doesn't sound like a great difference, but when you're talking about in technologies, it really is.
And I've known spotty areas where, for more times than not, I will go hours without reception, like in West Virginia, over there
Yeah,
in German Valley. You'll have it where you'll have spotty reception to where you will lose it for hours, and then for a brief period of time, it will come back on. So
yeah.
you have that too.
And that's the burden. The proof, the burden for that is on the state. And like, I don't understand why oh, what's his name? Not Beto, not Cecil, the other guy, that Kevin Horan, the FBI cast. Um, that's a state's expert. So I do want to know more about that. But then I was getting on that topic that in this group, Facebook group that I'm in, there's a few guys in there that just like really nail in, like, okay, this is just literally, this has no emotion attached to it. This is just like, this is what I found on this. And in 2017, he found all of this really good information about that particular phone in 2017, the issues, the bugs that they were having with it, and the software and all that stuff. Like, I mean, it's very detailed, like sourced out information, not just me or someone in a Facebook group saying it. It's like actual links, and like you can go and look here and then look here. And I have a client that worked for, could ask her, I guess, but yeah, like those are things that the burden is on the state for those, but the burden for getting this third party, other than just, well, you said, you implicate that the by charging the way that you did, and by your follow-up amended charging affidavit, that alone, like, why do we got to get into specifics? I still, just because I think it's probably just one person doesn't mean that it actually is. I felt like that for years. And even like Gray Hughes was just like, I can't believe you're so closed-minded. You wouldn't, it's like obviously involved. And I'm just like, I know your theory with the Kay and Klein and all that came out with the transcripts, it makes so much more sense. I can't emotionally like get attached to that because I just didn't feel it, which is moot. It's literally pointless. But I want to read this comment. The Humanimal says to Joe Smo, on one hand, you don't want innocent people persecuted, but you contradict yourself. You're so biased. Why would unexpected others to be unfairly charged like you think Alan is? Yeah. That's what's like, if the state is a big criminal underworld and they're just rotten to the core, and Richard Allen is innocent, and they've they're hanging him out, some whatever. Like, what about all of these other guys? If they can't make a case against Richard Allen, why can they make a case against these other people? And like, what is it about their anonymity that isn't important, like just getting drug into a double murder, accused. They're like, they did it. Like, that's why the public shouldn't know this kind of information.
Yeah.
Because you can go down a 25,000 avenues. I think I could make a better case for another person that's not even any of these ones we're talking about, a better case for that person than I could, but that's just me. I'm just a person. I'm just like a citizen. Like, we have no idea. And it's so reckless when you just, because some of the things that the defense has done, like, why didn't they? Why didn't they ask? Well, Murphy, well, Click, well, why weren't you able to prove this? Is it because you were blocked? Was it because you were taken off the case, whether good or bad? Like, why are you going to, under oath, you have to tell me that you couldn't conclusively say, you couldn't break the alibi that the state has provided you with. Like, you couldn't. Why is it that they didn't even follow up? They didn't even do a cross exam of like, hey, why is that? Why did McClelland just get to say that and they just let that stand? They did it to Perlmutter. Like, eventually it was just like, meh, they just kind of left her out to dry. Like, those are things that everybody should be upset about. But like, this undying hatred for McClelland and this just worship and love for they're just people. They make mistakes. The defense has made some mistakes, some really big ones. But again, what you're going to find if you read appeals is, would a jury of his peers, if they had known this or not known this, would their decision have been different as to the guilt or innocence of this person? Again, most of the time, because of the cumulative value of a trial, which is you can appeal a trial. Like, if you don't plead guilty, you can appeal. So the cumulative outweighs this. They may find in favor of the defendant on, yeah, they should have allowed Perlmutter's testimony in, but they didn't. But once we weighed out 25 ways to Sunday about everything else, we have made a decision that the jury would not have made a different decision if she had been allowed in. Therefore, even though this should have probably been allowed in, it still doesn't change the outcome. Appeal denied.
Mm-hmm.
Repeatedly, over and over and over again. Oh, I didn't even see this. Hey, Freckle Joy, it's been a minute. Haven't seen you in a while. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
To go into something that Joe Schmo was mentioning, this is a good question, a valid discussion about the phone. So Libby's phone was not communicating for 12 plus hours prior to 4:33 a.m. on the 14th. How did that happen? Did it just magically connect? And I guess it depends on if you want to take what First Sergeant Chris Cecil stated. He testified that new tests were being run on Libby's phone, the one she used to capture a man walking across the Monon High Bridge and telling them to go down the hill. Cecil said technology is better now than it was in 2019. So no, we don't need magical thinking for this. The last time it was checked for data. So the testimony revealed that her cell phone was still working at 4:33 a.m. February 14th, which is more than 14 hours after the girls went missing. The phone found at the crime scene connected to a tower at the time and started collecting at least 14 text messages. And after it had been out of service or out of range the rest of the night, that's what happened. It was out of range. And, Baldwin argued that the new information about the phone poked potential holes in the Brad Volder's man's alibi, which I don't agree with, suggesting that the girls might have been taken somewhere out of cell range and returned the next morning. It's just, those things do happen. I mean, I know they happen because they've happened to me.
Right. Like, and so that's why I'm just like, what if, I just don't understand. I don't understand why that's such a key point to prove when you have other even if you like, if we don't know time of death, we do know that experts, pathologists have said they died where they were, and they died within seconds, and they died where they were. Why would does that even make any logical sense that it would vary from the time of their death versus the time of their kidnapping? Why is that such a, like, I don't know. To me, with the phones, there's someone else that would come up in inquiries who has burner phones, and it's like a burner phone or your phone being inactive. Yeah. If you had a case to be made against Elvis Fields, for instance, because that's a big thing. Well, like the only day out of all these days that his phone was not working, like, or it was inactive. How is that something that you would take to the bank and convict someone on that?
No, you can't. And we have people who are just like you and I, where people right from the bus stop and
Yeah.
they're trying to tell us how it worked. Like
In the
I
did you
will,
read that memorandum of law
yes, and but
with
let me,
the PCA?
yes, but let me finish. Where like I
Yeah.
take what I'm saying from experts and I take their best educated guess, and like we know
Yeah.
the information can change over time based on improved technology, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
So it's just like all these people are sitting there and telling me in 2017 how a phone works and how they particularly know. I just want to know what degree or what did you work at a cell phone company? Did you study these phones or did you just
Right.
go on Google and look it up and now you think you know better than the people who do these data dumps and look at these things? Because I don't claim to be
I
better.
feel like it does need another hearing now.
Give it another hearing. I have no problem with it. But it's just
To clear up the stuff of they didn't have Cecil's newest, and then the stuff with Harant, like I want that transcript real bad because it seems to be like the geofencing part of the motion in limine. Like the defense is telling they have these other phones in and around the area. Like I want that. I felt like that needs to be, but again, like Cecil has a testimony that he can provide because he's an expert on this.
right.
But then he's like, yeah, I don't know. Like, that's not my expertise. This is what I do. Same thing with Edwards. And that they did the depot on, who tried to explain it. Like, which one of them, because they're like, again, they're very different. Which one of them is the truth? But these are the things. This is why I told, people don't want to listen, and you're not going to convince them. You're just not. And that's like when I after the hearing that I went to in August, I went on criminality, which I love her. And she was saying something. I was telling her, like, yeah, I tried. I wanted to just go through all of the court documents and like break them down and find all of the laws and everything. And I put all this time into it. And no. And she's like, oh, you should. And I'm like, why? Why? Like, people don't want to hear it. If you're not on the same boat, like they don't want to hear, neither one of these sides of people in this extremism group want to hear what I have to say, because I don't align with either one of them, and like they don't like it. So it's like, what's the point of bringing out the actual documents and following like what I've done with geofencing? I just went through and did a words find for all the documents all the way back to I think I would go from March of 2023 to now with that, and pulled out every document where the state or the defense is talking about it, whether the judge is ordered, whether there was hearing held on it, and I just put them all into a document.
Mhm.
Go through and read them some other time. And
Well,
maybe
and a
we'll
lot
get an
of
answer when we're done.
well, and a lot of these people,
People don't care. They don't care about the truth, though. They
that
just don't.
well, but here's how they look at it. They again, you've heard me use this term before, and I'll use more specific terms. It's tribalism, and to put it
Yeah.
in a specific grouping, a sports game. So we'll say football.
Perlmutter
And,
could still do it.
and then with football, you have two sides that believe that the one side is going to win and beat the other, and they're fully convinced. And even if the results and the outcome doesn't turn out, they will
Yeah.
find reasons to why the other person cheated. And so they'll say there was holding, there was pass interference that wasn't called. The ref is being biased. The ref isn't calling it, or they're calling it only for one team. Hence, even though that other team won based on scoring more points, they really didn't, because the referee allowed the other team to get away with it. And so that's really what it is. They don't want to accept the reality of the outcome. And
Right.
even if you have a guy who's a retired referee and can explain the very legalistic terms of the rules to why something isn't pass interference or why it's not holding, and
Yeah.
and if you're not into sports, this is boring. You have no idea what the hell I'm talking about.
Yeah, there's just a big one that happened on Sunday. Did you see that?
Hey, I'm a Patriots fan.
The
I had
pass
to.
interference. I don't even know what game it was because I was just
Oh,
watching the
I
game.
know what you. Was it Kansas
Literally, like
City?
over his freaking back, like,
What
hello.
was it?
He
Kansas
got him in like
City?
a neck hold whilst grabbing the ball
Was it
as they're
Kansas?
midair.
Was it Kansas City versus Cincinnati? Is that what you're thinking of? Was it a 4 o'clock game?
That sounds about right.
That probably is.
At 4,
Mm.
whomever, I can't. I mean,
But
I was just
but
watching football because
here's
if it's not the Colts, like, I'm for whoever, so it's
but
just like
here's
football's on.
the other argument that I heard from people that
It
didn't want
wasn't
to
called a
accept
pass
it.
interference, though, I don't think.
But here's I think it was, and that's why people were mad. If it's the game I'm thinking of with the Chiefs, it was they called the pass interference on the Chiefs defender. And what people were complaining about was that there was another call. I think it was
We're
was
gonna
it?
have to find it because I'm gonna fight you on
I
this
think
whether it's pass
I think
interference or not.
I think it was a false start. I think it was a false start, and so
Oh, before the pass interference?
they believe that the penalty should have been offset, if I'm thinking
I see.
correctly.
Okay.
So so people say that it should have been replayed. So that's what they would have said, and we would have found out what happened. Again,
Right.
that's something where I look at it where it's like refs make stupid calls. The results are what they are. If you wanted your team to do better, I guess you should have outscored them more instead of missing, throwing incomplete passes, getting sacked, not
That's a
catching the
very
ball.
good analogy, like a very good comparative analysis of these testimonies.
Joe,
Yeah,
I
I
have,
mean,
but like Joe, I've not made up my mind on anything. I do not know for a fact if Richard Allen is guilty. Based on the information that I have, I believe it is very likely, but there's more information that needs to come out. So I'm not one of these people who have stated that without a shadow of a doubt Richard Allen is innocent either. I think Richard Allen is guilty. I do not know Richard Allen is guilty. So those are completely different things. Until the trial happens and we have that evidence
yeah,
and we see that plays out, and if at that point I can say whether or not I know that he is or I know that he's not, or even I could say at that point I still don't know, there wasn't sufficient evidence to convict him. We will have to see that when it happens.
yeah,
And maybe, Joe, you're not pointing that towards me. And so if that's the case, I'm not trying to come at you that way. I just read the comment. But yeah, like there are people, for example, Anthony Greeno believes there's no room for doubt. It's Richard Allen. He may be right. He may be wrong.
very
But
good point.
and what's his point again?
Vigilante
Hold
justice,
on.
however.
Well, and there's difference between justice and vengeance. And so he's made the statement, and whether he goes through it or not, he's most likely posturing. But if the outcome doesn't go the way that I like it, if Richard Allen somehow is found not even innocent, just that there wasn't evidence to convict him, and so that's what happens. He's found not guilty. Then I'm going to find him and I'm going to kill him. That's Anthony Greeno, and that's not justice. That's vengeance. Those are two completely different things. Um, so there are people like I don't have that mindset like Anthony Greeno, where if Richard Allen somehow is found innocent, then we need to all saddle up. We need to all get together and we need to have a lynch mob and we need to take care of it ourselves. I don't have that mind frame.
Right. Exactly. Even I mean, that's why I say that I don't agree. Like people are just, I feel like there's just a difference in, I mean, I get sent, I don't know if you do. I get sent petitions all the time for inmates, like trying to get a petition to get their case, reheard or whatever. And so it'll be this petition, and I'm just like, oh my God. Usually I'm just like, who is writing these? I'm sure it's a family member and they're just trying to like be helpful. And there's a lot of them where they've been, or I've looked them up independently of the petition of, wrongful convictions. And I have signed a couple. Like I think it's horrible, and that's why I don't like the vice president that we have right now, because of a wrongful like conviction case. Like I don't care about anything about her politics or her as a vice president. I always go back to that, because to me that is like ego over winning an injustice that happened when technology now can like prove, and you just won't no until they had to go above you, and then he's released. Like that to me that's an egotistical thing. But like just to be willy-nilly out like he is innocent, like that's just the whole presumption. And I do think that the justice system is broken, and they're going to tell you that judge is going to give that to the jury as like before things even get kicked off. They're going to ask that in voir dire. Are you going to be able to put aside like the fact that this person is on trial for a very emotional double murder of 2 teen girls, and the brutality of like what was done to them and how they were left in those woods. Like, are you going to be able to set that aside in order and presume that this guy is innocent? Like, that is I think that a lot, like historically, juries, like people, they want to be biased towards the state, and that they've got it all right. But man, when they don't, like I've said all along, like if I attend this trial, which I plan to, and the state doesn't have things that I think they're probably holding back, and they don't have them, I'm going to be pissed. I'm going to be pissed at them.
Right. No, I completely understand that. I would too. It's like if these confessions are complete, like just rubbish, and there's nothing in there that would suggest to me in any of those 60 plus confessions that he would have any information that you and I couldn't have guessed. Right. I would be like, what is this? Does that mean that I believe he's 100% innocent? No, but the idea that should you convict him goes down, not to zero, but it goes down. And that's how I look at these things, because this is beyond reasonable doubt, not beyond all doubt. And that's, again,
right.
that comes to
that's another thing that the judge will give an instruction to the jury on.
Right. And I understand there are some people that believe, well, I don't like that. It should be all doubt. And I understand, but that's where you have to take your emotions out of it, and you have to look at the legal perspective of it. We have to look at reasonable doubt. But again, this is how we get fed that it's supposed to be all doubt. Beyond all doubt, this is how it goes. So that's why, like, if someone asks me, do you believe the West Memphis 3 are guilty 100%? Like, no, I can't say 100%, but I think it's a very high percentage, and that's what I base that off of.
Right.
Because of beyond reasonable doubt. There's no reasonable doubt for me. There's no, with Stephen Avery, do you 100%? I would say it's close in the 90s. I can't say 100 because I didn't watch him do it. There's nothing on camera that showed that he committed it. But there's a lot of evidence, both DNA. We have direct evidence with other direct evidence with confessions. Brandon Dassey, whether we can argue certain things, but he also said things again that only someone there would know. So there, the fact that like her stuff is in his burn pits, it's in his barrels, her vehicle is on the property, all of these things, I can look, it's beyond reasonable doubt. It's a higher percentage than the West Memphis 3 case, but I still believe both are guilty. O.J. Simpson was found innocent, or not guilty, rather, in his case. I believe he did it. But can I 100% say it? No, but I can. Again, I think that's in the 90s, because it's like how much damn DNA and blood do you need?
Don't fit.
And I hate it because my God,
that's another one. Like
she again. she is whether she did it or not, she was involved in some way. But I can't tell you how she was involved in that. And so I hate to say it, I don't blame the jury for making the decisions that they made. I blame the prosecution for going for a higher degree of murder. That didn't help either. They shot for the moon. They should only went what they thought would have been sufficient to convict. And if they really thought that was the way to do it, well, she could have got some prison time, which would have been better than nothing. I forget the people's names, but I don't know if you ever heard of the case of Heather Elvis, who's still missing, and I don't know if officially is presumed dead, but I think it's safe to say that she's dead. I believe the guy she had the affair with, plus the jilted, jealous wife of his, I believe they were involved in her disappearance, but they're not convicted with that. I think they were actually, if I'm not mistaken, convicted of kidnapping her, but they can't prove that they killed her. Really weird stuff. Weird stuff.
Jen Soto right now. When the Stephen Stearns, Madeline Soto. Like, she's not charged. They haven't charged her with anything. But when you like listen to her interview, she like Florida's just real open with records before a trial. Like, it's wild. All this stuff that's been released, like footage. If you don't follow it, you don't know what I'm talking about.
I know the name. I know the name. I know.
Like, it's hard to not hate this mom of this
I
little
know.
girl and to think that she should be charged with something. It's really hard just because the amount of evidence and like video of like all of the stuff that's come out. It's like, but then again, that's awful too, because she's not been charged with anything. So to call her a cold conspirator, like a murderer as well, or that she did it, like, it's super irresponsible, I want to read what Lake has to say really quick. She's a good friend of mine, and I love this comment, and she's right. Defense is not going to put out to the public any evidence that would make their client look guilty, period. Exactly. I believe there is more evidence, hence why they wanted so much thrown out. Justice for Abby and Libby.
100%.
Back to the fruits of the search warrant. And they already had they had a hearing on, and then they filed additional franks after the hearing that they had on the ballistics. They had a motion in limine or something. I don't know if it was actual hearing. I may be misspeaking there, but there was a decision made on the ballistics of like, that's expert to expert pretty much. It's not excluded. Limine is like excluding this from the jury to be hearing it. So Lake's right. Like, they're not going to put out. And if you really just take off whomever your cheerleader is, whomever's team you're on, and whomever you want to like you, and whomever you want to be a part of the group with, in a tribe with, whatever, like, look at it from not caring about adversity, not caring if people like you. Like, just look for the truth and the facts. And you can't say that there are facts that anything was presented. There are facts about these third-party suspects that should be in front of a jury, like actual facts. But still, she gave the caveat for like, if there's an offer to prove, like if you come across something, and I understand like they can't like investigate like investigators, like I'm not stupid, but at the same time, what is there, and what we don't know with the evidence against Richard Allen. Like, if you want to get on the solitary confinement, like that's a whole separate issue that's regardless of guilt or innocence. Just the thing with like what I said about Brandon Dassey. Like, if you watch the interview of that kid and then hearing about his diminished capacity and everything, like I feel like his conviction should be overturned. I think he's guilty, but I think he was also, like very influenced by his uncle. I think it was his uncle, right? Stephen Avery's his uncle.
Yeah, Stephen Avery is his
He
uncle,
was
and
young, he's diminished capacity. If you watch the interrogation interview of that kid, like, I'm sorry, but that's just straight up wrong. No. And then, but doesn't mean that he's not guilty, that he didn't do that with his uncle. It just means that on a legal position, and that's the thing here with this case. We don't have a legal position to be on because it hasn't been adjudicated. Unless you want to talk about but again, denied without a hearing, like a very, start out the beginning of that. It's like, well, that falls apart under Indiana law, Indiana Constitution. Like, it falls apart. Just falls apart.
I will say this to go back to the Brandon Dassey thing, because I think this is
Mm-hmm.
important. Even though we're talking about Delphi, I don't want to stray too much. Um, you know, the Avery family, Dassey's grandpa and grandma, and especially with Avery, was putting a lot of pressure on Dassey not to
Yeah.
confess at his trial, which is what he wanted to do. And there was a lot of intimidation there. Basically, if you do this, as far as his family goes, you can kind of read between the lines.
Right.
And so there were things that were in his best interest because it was truthful and it was the right thing to do, that
Mm-hmm.
his own family, not his mother, but like, Avery's mother and father was
Right.
talking him out of and was pressuring him also not to do certain things, to why he didn't eventually end up confessing against Avery, at
Mm-hmm.
trial, his uncle, to explain what he did, why he did it, and all that other stuff. I wanted to throw that out there too. That doesn't take away anything that you said, but I did want to throw another wrinkle at it.
Yeah. Which is, fair. Like, that's where the discourse and the debate, you can
Yeah.
go, you can go back and forth, but again, then it just ends up being like, I have a feeling,
Right.
but what is the legalities of it? Like, when
Sure.
you really get like what you're saying.
Yeah.
So,
Regardless of that, regardless of how
right.
the procedure should have been before that, absolutely. So that wasn't to like throw water on that. It was just to add something else, to the point that, his confessions were, I would say, in its most part, true. There were some things where he was like, "What?" And this does happen. They minimize their actions because of
Mhm.
the reality of it. But I mean, you know, it always starts off with, the most minimal details to where they become more truthful as they go on, and regardless of what should have happened, I believe he eventually told the truth, because again, he told things that only someone that was there would know, if that makes sense. Like, especially the things in the garage. Like, how
Yeah.
would anyone would know that? How would they find a bullet that was shot? How would you find Teresa Hallback's DNA in there? All these other different things. Where it close by happened, to where they found some of those things, like by I think it was the lawnmower. I could be wrong, but I think it was the lawnmower. But
Yeah. It's
there's actually like,
bonfire. Like, there's like few things that just like really
mm,
stand out other than Brendan Dassey's interrogation videos for me, of that whole thing of just like
mm,
the jumps you would have to go to think that like the police like brought this car and like were able to sneak it into this, junkyard, and it hadn't just been there the whole time. I'm just like, come on now.
well,
You
and it would
can't.
have to be a multi-agency
Right.
conspiracy too.
That's the other thing that always
Mm,
gets me too. And it's like, but then again, if you want to find something out there in order to put your bones behind and like your soul behind, like, you're gonna find it. Like, that's
sure.
the beautiful power of libraries and the internet. Like, if you want to find something to bolster your like your feeling or your opinion or your group think, like, you're gonna find it. It's just how it is. But a lot of people, I think, like, my favorite Einstein quote is, I'm probably gonna fork it up, but keep it simple, but
Hmm.
not simpler. Like, I think that it's such a simple thing, and this is Einstein, obviously, but it's just like the meaning of, like, you want to keep things like Occam's razor is where you want to start out when you're looking at anything. Like, just,
Sure.
let's not to Hickham's Dicum of like the most wild Perlmutter, you know, like going down rabbit hole theory of jumping in 100%. This is a ritualistic homicide. I mean, that just blows me away. That I just think it was inappropriate and unprofessional of a. She said she is a state, like not just state, but United States. That's where her, like, who gives you the authority to call yourself a, what was the main thing? Like an expert, like a.
If you're talking about Perlmutter, are we talking? Yeah, a trained FBI
Subject matter
DEA
expert.
agent.
Like, who gives you that authority? Yeah. And she says the United States government gives me that authority.
And she's right. Trained, you know, she
big ass responsibility, lady.
She's helping to train the FBI and the DEA.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for her to well, for one, she made presumptions about this case before she was even asked to weigh in on it. For one, which that to me, like, I could set that aside, like her saying, but for an expert to come out and be just looking at some drawings of the stick configurations and to give, like, because that's what she did on Court TV, which McClellan rightfully so called her ass right out on, you know, like, oh, well, you already said this is definitely, and then now you're on it, but like, what did they give you? What evidence did they give you? And like, she's like, oh, well, it basically comes out after a bunch of, you know, avoiding the answer. Well, I just had what they sent. Well, what did they send you? You know, and then come to find out, like, she didn't have all the information. Like, let's talk about the branches for a minute. The aerial view of the picture. Did you see any other or any very varying angles of the crime scene besides the aerial view? And she says yes. And so did you see the pictures of the crime scene from the water? I don't think I saw that angle. The opposite side of the water, you didn't see that? From the other side of the bank? Oh, yes. No, I didn't. I mean, it just throughout the entire cross-examination, it keeps coming out that she only, like, she didn't even know anything about, like, Richard Allen. That was my main thing. She jumps right into the suspects. How that, to me, that's the thing that just blows my mind, is that not only does she jump down the ritualistic homicide from an anthropological, like, she's got, her doctorate is in art of some sort. Like, to jump down that link, and then not only to jump down that link, but to like, oh, it's these specific people, naming persons in this ritual homicide, and then jump on a term, like, everybody jumps on this freaking magical thinking term. Well, I have magical thinking every day of my life. Like, when I won't step on a crack, when I'm going on a sidewalk, like a walk with my dog, when I still to this day, I'm 46 years old and I won't step on cracks. So my mom's back's not broken.
That's weird. Sometimes, like, when I walk on sidewalks, I will do the exact same thing. Or if there's just a natural crack, I always just have to step on the concrete. And I'm like, why do I do this?
I don't know. But when I get like an old, like,
but it's our childhood. That's why
they need to repeg this. This is, I'm just like, I don't even want to go on a walk because there's too many, I'm avoiding too many cracks in order to enjoy what I'm really supposed to be there for. But I have OCD. So the ritual is, and I have a lot of like irrational phobias, which is in the DSM, you know, like, to where she's just like, oh, it's completely anthropological methodologies is completely different from behavioral analysis. Yeah, it is. Therefore, you should know that it can't be completely applied to this scene that you're giving an expert opinion on and saying, oh, definitely, absolutely. Like words like that are,
well, you could tell she's working with the conclusion that basically confirmation bias. she's working with the conclusion that she wants or that is expected of her, whichever you want to take that as. And then she is now then going to then she's going but working backwards to make that fit what she wants versus looking at it and going, okay, where does this take us? Where does this lead us? She doesn't do that.
Yeah.
She's made her decision.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay. And
Facebook posts.
That's what they do.
And Facebook pictures. Like where so the far, I'm just gonna call them far left and right. Like it's like, well, where's the chain of sorry, the chain of custody on, this and that. Where's the chain of custody on this image from Georgia? And how can you prove that the state had it? Like they didn't prove that the state had it. They had it. And then they presented it as to this lady is like, well, look what he posted in 2013 on his Facebook page. And then he like other things that he would like groups and like things that they were doing and comparing them all. If you go look at like a bunch, you can find they all couldn't have done it, right? Let's just go with like, we could agree on that. Like not all of the practicing umbrella of Norse pagan, heathens, all of the names, all of the things in just this one pantheon. What is it called? A pantheon of gods, like this one religion with this polytheistic, religion. And then all of them have, like, they all couldn't have done it, right? So if they all couldn't have done it, that means that when you look at their Facebooks, I have the pictures on my phone because I've actually done this, and screenshots of all their, oh my gosh, look, they're all doing this sign of like, it's like a Manson sign. Oh, look, they all have these necklaces on. Oh, look, they all like to make their own knives. Look, there's this guy that makes knives. Well, there's like hundreds of them,
Right.
not named in this limine. Did they all do it? Be based on evidence that's based on, well, they have similarities in their Facebook posts. Like,
Yeah.
I can't. And then there's such a difference. Like, this is where I'm stuck now. I know we're not going to talk about it tonight with the Kevin, like some of the other testimonies of like, why didn't the defense ask for their experts? Like, or the people that they were calling that they really thought were going to really bring in this third party, Kevin Murphy, Todd Click, why David Vito, Kevin Horan, like, why is there all these missing? Why didn't they ask for these?
Mm-hmm.
But why didn't they push them? That's a failure on their part. They should have pushed them of like, well, why weren't you able to prove this as well, like when asked, did he, were you able to prove that he was linked to the crime scene in any way? And like the little question that McLuhan kept asking, and they're like, no, we were not able to prove that. Cross, what is Murphy, what is the reason that you were not able to prove that, in your opinion? Like, what do you think? Why weren't you able to prove that? Like, what was there something that happened? Like, if there's these three heroes, why is it that when they got on the stand, they couldn't say? And then why didn't the defense ask them? Do you feel like, was it because of you were blocked? You were kicked off? Like, no follow-up question. People should be mad about that. They dropped the ball in a few places. And I'm not even on their side. But I'm also not going to just read all of this and be like, oh my God, like get on team Allen or team not Allen by reading this and like just wanting to read what I want to hear. It's illogical. It goes against reason. So much of the stuff just goes against reason. But here we are. Here I am. I said I wasn't going to do this because people don't care. They don't want to know the truth. They don't want to hear both sides. They don't want to actually go through and look at the legality of stuff. And then here I am trying again.
But, and that's the sad thing too. And something that might be cheesy, but I implore people, like, it really is about the truth, not the truth that you want it to be or what you think it to be, but the fact is, we should, for example, if Richard Allen is not the murderer, then no one should want him convicted. If there is evidence that is
Yeah.
not satisfactory beyond a reasonable doubt, and if we have to look, we have to look at that objectively. We kind of have to wash ourselves from the bullshit that has really been the circus the past couple of years,
Yeah.
and even beyond that, and really just look and go, let's just start with this. Is Richard Allen the guy?
Yeah.
And let's start there, and let's be open-minded to the information that we don't know, because we don't know, because this tribalism
Even to
ruined.
fit the narrative of the white supremacist, to go so far as to be like, well, yeah, they typically don't go around killing, white, because they're purists. They want, white people are whatever, like, put your mind in the mind of someone that thinks like that. Like, they literally don't get ancestry, but whatever. Like, that's another topic I could talk about for days. But like, they're not going around killing little white girls. But
No,
but let's make it has to fit. So the mother must be it must be a race traitor. So they killed her 2 kids because of it.
but
What?
has
The
but has
actual fuck?
but also these people should also, because I mean, they should at least consider this, because the same people who thought that Ron Logan did it now thinks that the Odinists did it. So it's like,
Hmm.
how about, have we considered just the possibility? Now, I think my thoughts are pretty clear. I think Richard Allen is guilty, but maybe we can consider the fact that everyone that's being pointed at may not be the guy or the guys.
Yeah.
Have we considered that possibility? So even, okay, if they can't prove that Richard Allen is Bridge Guy, they can't prove that Richard Allen is the murderer.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that it's Ron Logan. That doesn't mean that it's the Kleins. That doesn't mean that it's the Odinists. And I
Hmm.
almost guarantee you that if Richard Allen is found innocent, you will never probably hear another word about the Odinist thing again. You probably won't. It'll just disappear magically. It'll go
Yeah.
away. No one will be looking for those
Just like
dastardly
Ron
Odinists.
Logan.
Right. It's like it'll go away. And
Well, I
it's
don't
like
know now. I mean, now, like, who knows what's going to happen with the third party, which,
there will always be new suspects other than who the real killer is. That's what will happen. It's the same thing with conspiracy theories,
right,
with JFK, 9/11. Who did it? Who's responsible? Why they did it? It always changes, other than the fact of who did it.
yeah,
And I know with JFK, I'll probably get a lot of shit for this. Look, it was it was Lee Harvey Oswald. In 9/11, it was fundamental terrorists. It was
yeah,
not the CIA. It was not the FBI. It was not a shadow government. It was not Russia, Cuba, whoever else. Because for example, no one wants to think, my God, someone was dastardly and wickedly clever enough to hijack planes with mace
right,
and box cutters, and to hijack the planes and have a strategic plan and do what they did. No one wants to think that way. No one wants to think that
yeah,
a loser guy, yeah, he was in the Marines, but just basically a loser guy, tried to defect to Russia. Then he realized that sucked, came back to the States. They don't want to think that a bum like him could have killed at that point, the most powerful man,
right,
in the world. And no one wants to think that, because it's so simple that it's like, how can something so simple take out something so great?
right.
That's,
Very, very, very well said, sir.
yeah, I mean, that's basically what it is. But if you always look at the conspiracy theories of all of those things,
Right.
they always change and they are always different, and it never stays the same.
But at
And
least with Ron Logan, there was like something. Like, I don't know.
I mean, it was on his
Something a
property.
little bit more logical of like, but then again, law enforcement went down this avenue for whatever reason. And then why didn't they call Turco? Why didn't the defense want to for the public record have Turco as one of these testimonies? Why? Why not?
That's a good
Just a
point.
lot of little things of us like, well, why not? Like, why did they not? This was their chance. They've been amping up to this in their Shakespearean, um, I'd like to call them like they're just extraordinary court documents that are written in written form. Like you see lawyers doing this, like at a trial or whatever, but to like have them write it down in such a fanciful, like Shakespearean, tons of just adjectives and expletives and like like it's kind of weird to see it in court documents anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm like, this was their opportunity and poop. But everybody's going to be mad at Goal, and the state still, all the state actors like.
Can I also point out with this whole state actor BS? Keep in mind, she was not the original judge that was assigned to this case. The original judge didn't want anything to do with it based on intimidation and other factors. So I guess that the conspiracy said, well, rats, well, who are we going to get now? They said, let's get Goal. Like, come on, people. Like, this is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But like I said, regardless, and even if, regardless actually, if Richard Allen is found innocent or guilty, I believe that a new suspect will appear all of a sudden to the conspiracy theory crowd. No longer will it be Logan or the Kleins or the Odinists. It'll become someone else.
Yeah.
Like that's at least what I think.
Anybody but.
Yeah. Mel, is there anything else you want to? I mean, of course, it's your live stream. You could stay on. I'm going to have to go here shortly. But is there anything that you think is imperative to add?
No, I think, again, like we're just giving this is trying to be reasonable. I asked him to come on because I feel like he's a very reasonable, respectful creator. And I like that. I like reason and reasonable people. And I try to be as reasonable as possible. There comes a point where you have to be able to see yourself. Like if you were just like to mirror yourself and be like, how do other people perceive what I'm saying? And I get that. And I get that they could be on the like, how do other people? Because when I hear some of them talk, I'm just like, you're clowning on, you're dismissing people for doing A, B, and C, and D whilst doing A, B, C, and D. Like, but you're confirming your bias. Well, they're just confirming their bias. Well, what are you doing? Like, but I also understand where someone's going to look at what I do, what you do, or whatever, and they're going to be like, oh, you're just like, state actors or whatever. And like, you're just confirming your bias. And like, even though you're like trying really hard not to do that, like, unless you're just presenting the deadpan, just presenting like everything and like finding all the legality, like I tried to do, and nobody cares because people don't care about legalities. It's just the heightened states of emotion.
Yeah, like I've heard like arguments like from another YouTube creator, like acting like Baldwin and Rosie are so good, and McClelland just needs Goal to give him all the calls so that he can help win this thing. And basically, I think the comparison was McClelland is like Vanilla Ice rolling up to a rap battle against like NWO or Public Enemy, and I'm like, I look at that. Maybe I'm biased because I look at that the complete different way.
Yeah,
I see it the complete opposite way, and I'm trying to see all of this.
I know.
Like the other argument is it's not a. The other argument isn't even like we're pro Richard Allen, we're pro Constitution. How convenient. Okay, well, I'm not really seeing his constitutional rights violated. I'm not seeing it.
Yeah.
Of course, there's.
I'd like to ask them if they were all, or if they had known, would they have been there for Derek Chauvin the way they are there for Richard Allen?
Right.
Come on now, be honest. Be honest.
But I've heard like, and then I hear like, it's funny, and then the same person will double down, and first they'll go, no jury's going to buy what the state says. They're cooked. They're done. And then it changes to the state's so corrupt, but the appeal, that's where we're going to get you. It's like, well, which one is it? Like, which one is it? Like, I thought you said like there's no reasonable jury that's going to buy this crap. So are you then already, without knowing who the jurors are, have you already predetermined that they're unreasonable? And
Right.
so now, because they're unreasonable, yeah, that's why Richard Allen, if he gets convicted, that'll be why. But the appeal, there's no way. Once you take it to the highest land of the courts, they're gonna overturn everything, and Richard Allen will be
Yeah.
innocent. So it always, again, they're always moving the goalposts. It's like you don't even know. Like, you have no idea how this is going to turn out. I mean,
Yeah.
I will say, like, initially, I was like, especially during the Franks and all that, Frank's hearing, or the Frank motions and all that stuff, and just the circus it became. I thought, I don't think Richard Allen, even if he's guilty, is going to be found guilty because of just the crap that's going on, the leaked photos, all this talk of Odinism. I think it's going to poison the jury pool. That I
Yeah.
just think that even if there's, or it's going to be a hung jury, we're going to have a hung jury like in the Karen Reed case. Like, it's going to be a mess. And then as things get closer and closer, I get a little more confidence, or I'm like, I think he's going to be found guilty. But at the end of the day, I don't know. And at the end of the day, I have to, people are going to have
Mhm.
to accept whatever is decided. If
Right.
he's found innocent, well, he can't get tried again, despite what might come forward after. If he's found guilty, he has appeals. He has those rights. Um, and I'm at this point now, I'm rambling, but
Yeah.
it's just, we'll see what
I like
happens.
the animals comment. I don't know if you read that. I think it's like a very good thing of like semantics of how a lawyers just lawyering of like the state just came out and like they in their PCA, like they're just like, but that is not, they don't have to do that. There's nothing um intrinsically wrong with the PCA that's filed against Richard Allen. Because in a jury of his peers, like obviously the burden of proof is more, has to be more than that. But like the defense could, if say the state in the list, the Rex Heuermann case, which is awesome, and they just added a new thing I need to watch about the John Doe they found right there next to, I think, Megan Waterman. But anyway, sorry, I got off and let my mind out.
Happens to me.
They so if the state had kept that fact back from the public, because they don't have to do that. We don't have a right to know that. There's nothing that says that they have to release all that they did in order to imprison Rex Heuermann. But that's the way they chose to do. Koberger, like there's other ones that are very, the PCAs are like books long. Their whole case is in it. And then other ones you'll read and they're just like, what is this? And then it comes out at a trial. There's just strategies. These are strategies. But so the defense could have worded this very similar to what we're seeing in the defense's wording of this case, because the state hasn't said anything. So people are like, well, if the state isn't going to tell us the opposite of that, then the defense must be true. No, that's not how any of this works. But they could have said that. They have with the evidence. Say they found a hair of Kathy's at the scene on the bodies, in the blood, in one of the girl's neck wounds. And Kathy Allen's hair is in there. Well, Kathy Allen has an alibi. She was at work or wherever she was. But like her husband would have like transfer DNA. Like,
Right.
so yes, that would be a valid, like, what the hell? How did this neck wound, which was literally there when the crime was committed, right?
Right.
How did a hair of Kathy Allen? But they could have worded that to be like, well, there's no forensic evidence that links Richard Allen. That's what Humanimal's making the point of,
Mm.
and it's a very good point, like a very good point to make.
Right. And a reasonable jury will
Hey,
infer.
Johnny.
Yeah, a reasonable jury can infer that it's secondary transfer of Kathy Allen's hair on a Richard Allen, and that's how it ends up on one of the victims. That's a reasonable juror can infer that. That's why it's
Yeah.
called inference. It's like, and if you can also point that, look, there's no one else with that hair. Any friends that we know of, or any family members that we know of the family who have regular contact with the girls, or even if they, God, it would probably be impossible to go this far, but even classmates, other friends, things like that, they go like, look, we've
Right.
had anyone, we had the hair samples. None of those match. This matches, or I'm sorry, it's not inconsistent with Kathy Allen's hair. And so you can infer, don't take this as the only point of evidence, but take this as one of many layers that, that shows that Richard Allen is the killer. It's like even the bridge guy video itself, it's blurry, but you can infer based on Richard Allen's build, based on bridge guy's build.
Right.
You can zoom in and you can't see
I
a clear
guarantee you
face.
there's gonna, I don't know what they're called, but like it's a sten something, a big graphy word, but voice comparison analysis.
That's going to be
I'm not
interesting.
going to put a lot of weight in it, but it is, I guarantee you it's going to be like, because they have done these with other suspects, making them walk around. This is FBI, like making them walk around and testing their voice at different points and junctures, and saying down the hill, like in different like places, So I think that I don't know. I hope that that's not it, because I wouldn't put a whole, you know, explosive into that of like, oh my gosh, this voice, analysis, fringe science, and this video, like be like a comparison video. Does that make sense? Like if
No, I
that's
hear you.
not taking it to the bank, but it can also rule out someone that like, and then it was even like Brad Holder had a big old beard at that time. Like, where is the beard on this guy? But there's
Well,
always
don't
a
they
reason.
don't
There's
they
always a
always
reason.
don't they always try to say, well, he wasn't the direct one to do it, but he was involved, and so it's like
Yeah, and I guess
that's
there's a
basically,
report. So I saw
yeah,
a bearded man out there now,
yeah.
and like it
So
wasn't Elvis Fields, but
it's like
I think it's
like
horrible.
like
This
they'll say he
this
wasn't. Oh,
guy.
he wasn't there at that time, but later he was probably responsible for transporting Abby and Libby back with the others. So
Yeah,
and he was a part of wherever they went to do the ritual sacrifice. So
right.
that's what they'll say in regards to that. But yeah, as far as that other stuff, I would
Yeah,
I'd be surprised with what they use with it. To me, unless I'm like I get a shock and awe with certain evidence, I look at it as the timeline of Richard Allen, the witnesses, the credibility of the witnesses that saw him at those times,
yeah,
the statements that Richard Allen made, and then also his confessions. The confessions, how reliable are these confessions? We understand that not all of them are going to be, that there will be inconsistencies, and we
yeah,
can kind of see in the timeline when that does happen and whether or not he was coached at some point to not tell the truth or to muddy it to kind
yeah.
of help his case. Because at the end of the day, you can be,
You
you
can
can feel,
opine a lot
well, you
about
can,
motive.
but you can feel guilty. You can want to confess. You can want to unleash that burden. And at the
Yeah,
same time, you still might say, I want to go free. I don't want to. That's scary. It's a scary thing to know you will never have freedom again. It is scary to know you'll never be able to eat a slice of pizza when you want to eat it, to go see whatever movie you
yeah,
want to see, to you know, go out to a trip with your wife and your kid, all of those things. So two things can be true is you confess because the burden is too great and you know you did it and you can't hold on to it anymore.
hmm,
But at the same time go, I wish I didn't do that because I don't want to screw myself. I want to go free. I know I did it. And yeah, maybe I could be truthful to
yeah,
my wife after the fact. I can minimize why I did it, and maybe she'll forgive me if there's not enough evidence against me. Again, that part's conjecture, but let's just say he tells her, "Oh no, I was just crazy, honey. What I told you, I was nuts. I'm sorry, psychosis and all. Um,
right.
I didn't do it. I'm free now if he's found innocent, and let's move on with our lives.
He
We'll
wants
move
them to
somewhere."
love him regardless.
Right. He doesn't want to lose that. And even if he
Which
confesses to
that's
her, he
human.
he's not going to give her the exact disgusting reasons why he did what he did. He's going to minimize his actions to her, where he will maybe be more truthful to someone else because it's not devastating telling it to them. You know,
Yeah,
like that's
exactly.
Jesse Miskelly's confessions. His confessions to the police were more truthful. He couldn't tell his family what he did.
Hmm.
Uh, that was hard for him. I can't. He could not sit there and tell his father, "This is what I did to those boys." He
Right.
has such a respect for his father, um,
Mm.
but he knows he did what he did. But he just can't, he doesn't have it to tell his family. I
Yeah.
helped kill. I mean, and brutally savage 3 kids. In the same way that Brandon Dassey can't sit there and truly say, because I don't believe all of that was done on gunpoint. The kid was involved too. He wasn't the ringleader of it, but he was involved in it. He just
Yeah.
wasn't,
I
but
just the culpability as far as like legality of it is where I get.
right, right.
Not his actual
But
innocence.
but still, even with when, for example, when his mom says, "Why did you do what you did?" I don't know. Again, it's when a kid does something bad, it's like, why
Yeah.
like you say, don't eat any of the cookies that are in the dining room. Okay, we don't eat those until after dinner.
Was he 17, 16 or 17?
Around there, he was a minor, like he
But he
wasn't
was
18.
also like he was diagnosed as like what we would call, low IQ, like diminished capacity, right?
Yeah, but
That was the
again,
thing for me of like, and then the way that they use the read technique with which I hate it. The
yeah,
read technique in investigation. But that's not just specific to Delphi, Indiana. That is the whole
right.
entire United States. They've been taught that method of how to interrogate to get a confession. Like, and
But
I don't like it. But what?
regardless of the IQ, regardless of the IQ, like with anyone, whether Richard Allen, Brandon
Yeah,
Dassey, Ted Bundy, whoever it may be, when we get to the reasons, and you catch someone with their hand in the cookie jar, so to speak, and you ask, "Why did
yeah.
you do that?" Is exactly after I told you not to do it. The answer is usually always a minimized answer of "I don't know," not
Mhm.
I wanted the cookie. You told me no. I was going to do it behind your back, deceptively, without you knowing.
Yeah.
But
And
no,
that's
the
the
answer,
principle of the read technique. It's based
yeah,
on that. Like, well, like, just tell us, like, we know that you're a good like, like, tell us your excuse for why you did this,
mhm.
right? The read technique is like, that's the basic, like, just if you want to boil it down to like one principle, it's like giving people that out. And there's different techniques, like they can come at them hard and like,
It's
guilt,
an
but the intimidation, like all of those things are a part of the read technique. But most of the time when you see it in an interview, it's how can we like help you confess, but like make you not feel so ashamed of yourself. And then sometimes they'll just get a complete psychopath that will come in there, sit down and been like proud of themselves. What's that one chick? She just eviscerated that poor man. I mean, and she was in her she had his head in a bucket. Like it was just she was living in the basement of like her parents' home or boyfriend's home. She had a really weird last name. She was just found guilty. And I mean she did, she just went to town and she sits down in there and she's like excited to tell these and how turned on, like she goes into some great detail. And then you'll have other ones that are not psychopaths or they're not criminal, like they're not insane or something. And they just want to be like, even in parole hearings, like you've been in order to get out, you just have to admit fully to what you did. Like it's no matter how heinous it was, no matter what you did, like especially when you get into like child molestation and rape and stuff, they don't want to admit that. And we're even at their parole where they'll just like dance around it. I'm like, oh well, I had sex with her, but she didn't really say that I could. Like, just call it what it is. What were you convicted of, sir? And they will dance all the way around that because of the shame and like human nature of like
right.
shame. But the confessions are going to be, people are saying, well, the that's why they, brought the bullet up in the Coleman's interrogation, and now like everything that he could confess to at trial, literally already giving their reason for not believing these confessions. People are literally already telling you why they're not going to believe these confessions, which is crazy. But their reason is like, well, they probably read, like, it's nothing that the public doesn't know. Richard Allen has not been in the freaking public, people, but he would have access to whatever the defense attorneys are telling him, I guess. You could blame them for his confessions, or like the prison, all that's on videotape. So if they fed him like only the killer would know information, like it's just crazy that people are already justifying his confessions away.
Yeah,
Before they even hear them.
Let's just hear them. Can we just hear them, and can we base them off their merits plus other things that will be presented? That's all.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. And I'm okay. Look, I'm okay if someone's leaning towards one or the other, even if heavily. If someone goes,
Right.
I just don't think, like, again, a very close, very intelligent, smart friend of mine believes that he may be innocent. Okay, that's fine. I'm not going
Yeah.
to sit there and be like, well, now you're my mortal enemy because you believe something different
Thank
than me.
you. Very
Like,
true.
it's the same with, if someone believes that they're leaning towards guilty. I'm one of them. Big Solves is one of them.
Yeah.
Last I checked, Gray Hughes, unless something changed there, I don't know. I haven't paid much attention.
No,
But
I doubt it.
but like we look at the evidence and we see like, and those, by the way, those two guys are smarter than me. I
CD.
don't.
If you hear me,
Yeah.
CD analysis of a crime, we need you. Come back, sir.
And I want to, like, those two guys are way smarter than me, so I don't even want to put myself in on their level. But I agree, like, leaning towards that way. But I need to know the evidence. I need to know what's going to be presented at trial. That's important. And if
Yeah.
there's an appeal, and if there's evidence that's presented that changes things, sometimes
Yeah.
new evidence comes to light that could change everything.
Yeah.
But let me see what's going on. Like, all of us, not just me, everyone. Let's
Yeah.
just see. It's okay, but like some, like, I mean, like, yeah, again, it's all I've said it before. I'll say it again. It won't be the last time. The tribalism is off the charts. It's scary. It's sad. It's not just
Mhm.
with this case. I can make an argument that it's uglier and nastier in the Karen Reed case. Um,
Yeah.
a content creator who,
Business. Sorry.
what's that?
I let my inside thoughts come out. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Um, I had, because of that kind of stuff, I had a content creator who I had a lot of respect and admiration for, because all I said, I didn't talk about innocence or guilt. I just said that the
Yeah.
Karen Reed thing has gotten nasty on both sides. And all I got was how basically I don't have a set of balls because
Hmm.
I haven't drawn a hard conclusion based
Yeah.
on anything regarding that. And my whole thing wasn't about innocence or guilt. It was just simply about the nastiness and ugliness on both sides, because it was pretty
Yeah.
ugly. Um,
I mean,
and
how can you disagree with that statement though? Like, isn't that kind of the point?
my
It's
only
like just
guess,
wild. Like, oh, you're just the I
I
don't know.
think,
It's crazy
that
the
they,
loops that people can get to that accuse you of things of like you're garbage because of A, B, C, and D. It's like, what? Oh, you just gotta like not take people seriously though.
well, yeah, I mean, uh, I'm sorry, I completely lost my train of thought.
I do
Um,
that constantly.
no, that's okay.
That's why I have this comment up here that I've had it up here so I didn't lose. Like, yes, of course, like I agree, Sandollar. Audio and video analysis are going to be a part of the trial, as they should be. But there should be more than just audio and video analysis. Like we know that there's more than that, and I'm just saying if like that was their like big ta-da at trial, was like the only thing that we found out at our trial was like that, I would be like, what the hell? Because I think that there's more. And my hope for that is how hard the defense has fought to get the search warrant suppressed. They have fought so hard, very hard. So, but Taylor Shabusiness, that's the girl's name. Yeah.
Something
Shabusiness, literally the last name of this chick.
Something that Humanimal said, it was pretty interesting, is the fact that we might at some point be seeing or hearing all of the 43 seconds that we know that was
Yeah.
recorded by Libby's phone.
Yeah.
Um, and how even I mean how many seconds have we heard like from that video versus what we saw, that little, just the maybe 1 or 2 step walk to just basically guys and down the hill. And I think even my understanding
Yeah.
is the guys and down the hill may not have been exactly together, but they kind of like clipped that together.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but it's
43
like
seconds total. And then like the
that's
clip we
yeah,
only heard was like what?
that's what I'm
Down
saying. Yeah,
a second? I don't even think it was a full
maybe even like 2 or 3
couple seconds.
seconds.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'd have to
not a
look.
lot.
Um, I'm never comfortable with a circumstantial case. Yeah. I'm not either. And that's why I consider myself kind of like on the fence, because right now this is what we're seeing because it's not been adjudicated again. But like, man, there's so many cases that, like Scott Peterson, Byrne, you brought it up earlier. Like the circumstantial evidence in that case, I don't know. It
But
did it for me. Like I think he's
he,
guilty as fuck. Who else would do like? Who else would go out there and be looking at the same bay that he put her body in when they like made a bunch of, and like, ooh,
well, and
what did they find her today? Like I'm gonna
you
go out and look and see if her body's been found.
you
Like
placed yourself where they found. Yeah, he placed himself
right,
where they found her. He's going
right.
there to look without, not in their, at least in his mind, not in their sight to know that he's looking. He's there because he wants to see. Um, the voice, there was a voicemail like when they thought they found something, and he's answering his cell phone, and it's being monitored. And I think it was a voicemail, and he's like, now that could be the whistle can be interpreted as, "Oh, I'm glad they didn't find her and that she still may be out there."
Right.
But based on his actions and how he has
I
been,
can't whistle, or I would make that sound as a
right?
whistle.
But and even my whistle was poor. But like
I hate whistling. It
yeah,
triggers my anxiety.
sorry, but like
You didn't do it. You're just talking about it.
but like but more like he was relieved that they didn't find her because he knew
Yeah,
that
like woo
I
woo.
I placed myself there. I placed myself going fishing there that day. That's where they're searching. If they find the body,
I'm gonna
I'm
go look
screwed.
out.
You know, and if we remove ourselves from the ridiculous thing that someone who is the real murderer, real perpetrators, dumped her body there once they found out he said that he was there, which is nonsense.
No.
Utterly, just utter nonsense. So, there's a lot of circumstantial evidence in that case. You can't really use DNA because it's like, oh, you found DNA on, on
Even in
Lacey.
today, people don't realize that DNA is not like
It's not. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's good.
it's
Like
not the be
in,
all
in
end
some
all.
respect, no, it really is not. It really isn't. You really need something that is as complete as you can possibly make it. And a lot of times, DNA is not something that they can really use if it's not there, or if it's minimal, or it's been corroded, damaged, washed away, what have you. And so you have to look at other things. Um, I mean, the Manson case wasn't, well, even though that was back in the 70s. I mean, that was a DNA case, but I don't see anyone going back saying that we need to overturn those convictions. Um, you know, I was worried there for a second about the Scott Peterson thing, but I'm not worried about it now. Um, the
Name. I'm
Chris
not either.
Watts, the Chris Watts thing. I mean, again, well, that
There
one
we
is a
go.
little more. That one's a little more direct because he
There's
pointed
your
him to the
answer.
body. What's that? Oh,
There's your
1.8.
answer.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean,
Um,
that's a lifetime compared to 40. I mean, that's 43 seconds is a lifetime compared to 1.8 seconds. Thank you, Humanimal, for bringing that up. Or for
good to know. You can just apply Occam's razor to that. I mean, I think that they're investing. Like I don't understand why they did what they did. And as a juror, I would, when these things are coming out of like, especially this around sketches, but I'm also, it's hard for me to separate myself from just like a regular old citizen that hasn't followed true crime since the 80s. Like I would have to tell them that. when they go to put me on a jury, like, are you going to be able to be impartial? I feel like I would be able to be more impartial than the common, just citizen that doesn't know anything about. But I could see where a defense would probably want me on their jury based on my answers in voir dire, but a
Right.
prosecutor would be like, absolutely not. Like, no. Especially if they don't have a strong case. Now, if they have a strong case, I think either one would, but that's going to be a factor. You're going to be asked that, like, these questions in voir dire. If I'm saying that right, voir dire, I don't know. But
Yeah, I'm bad with words too, with the pronunciations and the vowels and stuff like that. That's okay. Even I was like, is it lemonade, lemony? I'm like, which one is that?
yeah,
Even with Gallipoo,
lemonade.
Gallipo. Yeah, it's like, I'm like, which is what? But
I
cold
think I
was,
said his name like 5 different ways that whole episode.
but I'm the same, so I can relate with that. But cold
Yeah.
truth,
Yeah, it's good talking to you.
I could talk to you about this stuff for like
Oh,
midnight,
I know.
and if I didn't have to go to work, and if I wasn't hungry, I would.
Yeah, I hear
But
ya.
I appreciate you having me on. I
Yeah,
appreciate
thank
having
you
the
for coming.
conversation. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
we'll
always
definitely do it again.
enjoy your view. I know we didn't get to anything past Perlmutter. Like, we were just gonna do 2 episodes, but, um, it's your call on that.
Yeah,
I think
we'll figure it out. We'll
we'll
figure something out. We'll see
we'll
how.
decide.
Yeah, I'll let you know what's going on. We can see schedules, and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
If you end up covering it without me, it will not hurt my feelings if the schedules don't
Yeah.
align.
I
But
think I
we'll
am
work
gonna,
it out.
because like, I'm gonna do the geofence thing, like, just reading off, like, all the stuff that just, like, literally just going and finding tag words that,
Yeah, go
and
ahead.
I'll probably do that. And I don't know, I do wanna, talk about Cicero and stuff, and see, and that's the thing of too, of will my own um characterization pre-trial when I go, because when you attend in person, you hear and see things, not all that the jury sees, not all. People think that, and that's just not true. Even if there's cameras or no cameras, you don't see everything that the jury sees. You do hear everything, so
Mhm.
I wonder if my perception will be changed. That's why I want to go all the way through the transcripts that we do have,
Right.
which is the last one is it Cicero, I think.
Cicero's one. I thought there was a couple more.
So I just want to, because I just want to see of, like, does attending this trial that's been tried in the public,
Mhm.
literally it's being tried in the public, and it's only being tried in the public really by one side, you know.
Right.
Um See if it changes over the course of the entire trial.
We shall see.
Yep.
And Humanimal, that's a great point about the 6 concrete anchors. Of course, they'll just try to say he was trying to create anchors for the boat. The other point I'd like to make to that is there were other places he could have, since he wanted to just merely test the boat, he could have tested that boat in places much closer than the actual bay that he went to. Also, I thought it was crazy he'd want to test that boat out at the bay. So that's something that can be discussed. Plus, the
Right.
fact that he already had in his mind he was going to that bay. He wasn't just deciding he was going to test the boat. He made a plan. That's something but that's not how he brought it up. He brought it up like this was a spontaneous decision because he wanted to test it for his father-in-law. So I just wanted to end with that.
Yeah, I agree
All right.
for
Well,
sure. Thanks for
Coach,
coming on.
thank you. I hope you have a great evening. Enjoy
You
it.
too.
Relax. That's what I'm going to do. Eat,
Oh,
go to bed, work, do it all over again.
I made us a logo. Did you see it?
Are you talking about the one over to the side?
Yeah, I'll have to tell. I'll remind me. I'll send you the picture of it.
But is it the one on the upper right corner?
Yeah, this little thingy up in the upper whatever corner that
Yeah,
is. I don't know.
send it to me because I'd like to see it enlarged. But I thought that was awesome. I like that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Chaotically cold. She made us one, and it was super cute and cool. So I was like, oh, I have some time. I need to take my mind off of reading. My eyes hurt. So I made
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Send me all of it, man. That's awesome.
All right, dude. I'll talk to you later.
All
Thanks
right.
for coming on.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone who's still here. Have a good one.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for being, here. If you listen back, thank you. Just remember, just try to be. I'm going to look up that Einstein quote like right now. We'll leave on that. Everything should be made as simple as possible. Everything should be made as simple as possible, but no simpler. Ah, beautiful. Like, that's really the key to life, It's really when you want to really figure things out, do that first, but not simpler than that. Like there's a lot of meaning in what Einstein said there with those words. But thank you for being here, you manimal. Good to see you. Anytime you want to come on and talk, like, you have an open invitation with me. Sand Dollar, thank you for being here. You've been here pretty much all night. I really appreciate it. You too, Johnny and you Manimal and everybody that hung in, and even those that disagreed. I thought that Joe Smo was here, and I know that he has or he or she, I don't know. They have, strong feelings, DB. But I like all that, like Phoenix, I like Criminal. I like so many of them. There's a few I don't like, and no one's going to talk me into it. But Travis, Michael Oshbrook, like there's some really solid people that I really like as just people, as far as what I know of them on the World Wide Web. And Adrian, there's just some really good people, and I love debating as long as it can be respectful and we don't have to disintegrate into saying, just like, well, you're stupid, or that's dumb, or how, like, what an idiot that you think that, or you're just on this side or that side, like what, or into looks, but anyone that wants to come on, that wants to just debate, just to talk about all the things, and really actually try to be from, even if I took a far left side and you took a far right, but putting yourself in the opposite shoes, even though I don't consider myself far of anything, I think that would be cool. Like, would you be able to argue my points, even if you don't fundamentally agree with them? And could I argue your points, even though I don't fundamentally agree with them? That's what debate actually is. But let me know. coldtruthpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you guys for being here. Great music. You're funny. Hey, Lone Pony. Glad you're here. All right, guys. Have a good night. I'll see you later.